Hello, hockey fans, and welcome to another episode of Anatomy of a Season, the series where we look at a given team in a given season, what all led up to it, how the roster came together, the results, looking month by month, game by game, and all of what went down. We've looked at champs, chumps, the highest of highs, lowest of lows, the cream of the crop, the cream of the crap, and sometimes anything in between. And there's been a whole lot of excitement in the city of Montreal this year as the Montreal Canadiens this year in 2024-25, barely averaging 25 years of age, managed to slip into the playoffs, setting a unique record, despite giving the fifth least odds of winning the Stanley Cup at all in the preseason. So I figured that we would take a deep look at a Habs club that also had a crop of young talent, and while not expected to outright fail, they weren't exactly expected to set the world on fire either. Ah yes, the 1985-86 Montreal Canadiens. Hell, you look at this team picture and you see a heap of talent, but yeah, a few of those who would actually make an impact on this team aren't even in the team picture yet. I pick us up to say, hey, we're the Habs. Playoffs is no issues, we'll be there. And indeed that was often the case with Le Bleu Blanc et Rouge in this era. But there comes a time where that's no longer enough, especially for a team that dominated the 50s, and the 60s, and the 70s. Well, the 80s didn't exactly come as easy. And now here is a backstory. May 21st, 1979, the Montreal Canadiens defeat the upstart New York Rangers in 5 games to win their 4th Stanley Cup in a row, the 22nd Stanley Cup in their history, their 6th of the 1970s. The Habs weren't just hockey royalty, they were sports royalty. Since their inception in 1909, Cups in 1916 and 24, back-to-back in 1930 and 31, 2 more in 1944 and 46, and the dynasty truly took dominance in the 1950s. They appeared in the Stanley Cup final every year from 1951 to 1959, and also from there, from 1956 to 1960, they won an NHL record that still stands to this day, 5 in a row, very unlikely to be broken. And indeed, they won 4 cups in 5 seasons from 1965 to 69, 2 more in 1971 and 73, and right to this 4 in a row from 76 to 79. Habs set a then NHL record 58 wins and a sweep over the 2-time defending champion Flyers in 1976. And then NHL record 60 wins, 132 points, and a sweep over the Big Bad Bruins in the finals. 1978, 59 wins, and at that time a 28-game unbeaten streak. The Bruins, however, put up more of a fight that year, and the Habs needed 6 to win it. The 1978-79 season, however, started with the retirement of arguably the greatest general manager of all time, Sam Pollock. 14 seasons, 9 Stanley Cups. The new man in charge was Irving Grunman. Well, he was a very smart businessman who took care of business affairs for the Montreal Forum. He had no experience on any level of hockey, not even Pee-wee. He was simply friends with the right people. The Habs had a great regular season in 1978-79, 52, 17, and 11, but down from their previous productions, and the New York Islanders actually beat them out for the best record in the league. Some feeling it was their time, and the semifinals against the Bruins, for the first time in this run, Montreal was taken to a 7th game in a playoff series. Some are now feeling the Bruins could actually finally unseat the Habs, and the Habs actually trailed 4-3 with just under 4 minutes to play in the 7th game. Not long after, however, a shift change snafu by the Bruins led them to be called for too many men on the ice. Despite never being in a dire situation of this in recent years, Habs coach, the great Scotty Bowman, clearly had them prepared if it ever happened, as the infamous goal by superstar Guy Lafleur tied the game with just over a minute to play. The Habs won it on Yvon Lambert's overtime winner, and it wasn't the Islanders awaiting them, however, in the finals. It was the Rangers, who had upset the Islanders in 6 to get there. Habs lost game 1 at home, the only time they'd lose a final game at home in this stretch, but roared back and won the next 4. And while some felt the Islanders' time was still coming, other teams were growing and could take the mantle as well. There were many feeling the Montreal Canadiens, however, cannot be stopped either. This 1978-79 team had, count them up, 10 Hall of Fame players. Megastar Guy Lafleur, goal-scoring winner Steve Shutt, playmaking center and clutch hero Jacques Lemaire, agile big man Ken Dryden in net, and the defense, the defense. Big hitter and rush leader Larry Robinson, smart and strategic captain Serge Savard, focused and aggressive Guy Lapointe, rookie traditional style blue liner Rod Langway, and there was also team captain, the speedy roadrunner Yvan Cornway, and the man you see pictured in this glorious moment, 1979 playoff MVP, Conn Smythe Trophy winner, checking specialist, two-way sensation, Bob Gainey. Way back when, only the captain received the Stanley Cup and hoisted it for a quick victory lap, and then it was off to celebrate in the locker room. But this infamous moment in Habs history, with Gainey being hoisted on the shoulders of his teammates while hoisting the cup, as new captain Serge Savard handed him the Grail, emphasizing his importance to that win, began a new tradition. It was no longer just the captain taking a skate with the cup. In these finals, however, Lapointe was hurt in Game 7 of the Boston series and didn't play a single game. Yvan Cournoyer missed the whole playoffs, only played 15 games all season. Like any dynasty, you still have to roll with the changing times and keep building for the future to keep winning. The Habs still had many great players and other Hall of Fame talent, other than the Hall of Fame talent they possessed, I should say. They had Iron Man and tremendous defensive center Doug Jarvis, scrappy yet heart-driven Mario Tremblay, hard-working Alain Jean-Houle, up-and-comers Pierre Mondu and Mark Napier, a gritty Tiger in Doug Riseborough, former Penguins all-star Pierre LaRouche, a young hard-working defenseman in Brian Engblom, and a very reliable backup goaltender in Michel Bunny Larocque. But big changes were coming. After the season ended, goalie Ken Dryden, at 31 years old, decided to call it a career and focus on his career in law. Jacques Lemaire, however, took a job as a player coach and GM of HCCR, where he would stay overseas in Europe in 1980 until 1981. He turned down a pretty lucrative offer from the Habs, and Yvan Cournoyer's back problems ultimately caused him to retire. Scotty Bowman, the man behind the bench, another Hall of Famer, who in 8 seasons coached the Habs to 5 Stanley Cup wins, apparently thought he would be the one to take over for Sam Pollock as general manager. And many of the Montreal sports press and media thought so too. So did the fans. The backlash of Grumman's hiring wasn't just the media responding. Well, Bowman had a year left on his deal, so he saw it through and coached another winner. But fed up with the organization, he took a GM coach position for the Buffalo Sabres. And the Habs' head coach would be Habs icon Bernie Boom Boom Geoffrion. Bernie did have some coaching experience back with the Atlanta Flames, but he'd been working the prior 4 years as a color analyst for the Flames and local broadcasts. But before I go any further, I'm going to detour back to the 1978 draft, where 231st overall, Sam Pollock in his last draft picked Chris Nyland out of Northeastern University in Boston, part of NCAA Division I hockey. Fist of steel, jaw of stone, Nyland is definitely a tough guy who can send a message to any given opponent or team. And this is back when enforcers still served a purpose. But back to the 1979 days and the draft, where Grumman's fully in control, but despite his inexperience, the Habs still had a great scouting team led by Ron Caron. The landscape of the NHL, however, was changing. 4 new teams out of the now defunct WHA had joined the NHL: the Oilers, the Whalers, Nordiques, and Jets. Habs didn't have a first-round pick, as a matter of fact, but they'd have 2 picks in the second round and 3 in the third. The 1979 draft is regarded as one of the best draft classes of all time, and not just for the first round either. In the second round, 27th overall, is defenseman Gaston Gingras, who played for the Birmingham Bulls of WHA for 1 year, so he does have pro hockey experience. Good size, but not overly imposing. He played a traditional style, but could still provide presence from the point offensively. His 1 year in the WHA in 60 games, he had 13 goals and 21 assists for 34 points. And during 186 games in junior hockey, most of which were spent with the Kitchener Rangers, he averaged literally a point a game with 186. 10 picks later, still in the second round, the Habs take Mats Naslund, a native of Timor, Sweden, and a member of Brynäs IF. The Habs hadn't really tapped into the European market much, but to be fair, teams like the Leafs as well as WHA were far ahead of the curve when it came to Swedish talents. But the Habs scouts started looking overseas, and to Grumman's credit, he too saw the game was changing. Naslund had great speed, quickness, and a smooth scoring touch, but at only 5'7", experts felt he wouldn't play a single game in the NHL. He has played in 3 World Junior tournaments consecutively in 77, 78, and 79, winning a silver and bronze respectively in the latter 2, and a silver in 1978. He was named to the tournament all-star team, and he won a bronze at the 1979 World Ice Hockey Championships and will represent Sweden at the upcoming 1980 Olympics in Lake Placid. The vicious Montreal sports media, however, took the poor guy out for breakfast due to his size, but they underestimated his determination. And in the third round, 43rd overall, the Habs also took Greg Livy, a defenseman who would play 183 NHL games, but none for the Habs. But Montreal also had the very next pick at 44th overall after that, and they took from the Chicoutimi of Quebec Major Junior Hockey League center Guy Carbonneau, a centerman full of heart, determination, and leadership quality. He was a great passer and had a pretty good scoring touch too. But what he was more being seen for was his defensive abilities. He was a superb penalty killer, a great face-off man, solid checker, and wasn't afraid to block shots with his powerful forwards opposing him. In 3 seasons playing in Chicoutimi, 99 goals, 154 assists, 253 points, and in 201 games, including an epic 62 goals, 79 assists for 141 points in 72 games in the 78-79 season. 78th felt Carbonneau is a guy Pollock and Bowman would have liked a great deal. This is seen as a bit of a steal in the draft. 14 picks later, the Habs would actually take goaltender Rick Wamsley, making a good selection there. In the 1979-80 season, the Habs started 15-9-6. Now, you think that's not bad at all, and it really isn't in the grand scheme of things, but it is seen as lackluster when you're a team that has dominated the league the previous 4 seasons, and when you win more than 50 games a year and don't even lose 20, and yet you've almost lost half of that. Geoffrion was taking some bit of unfair flack to play devil's advocate. Anyone who have a brain would know that the off-season losses were going to have some effect on the Habs. But again, much like the past, his health problems and feeling more and more pressure, Geoffrion stepped down after those 30 games. Many saw this coming. Taking over, however, would be Claude Ruel, a man very familiar to fans in Montreal. He took a job as director of scouting in 1963 with the Habs at the young age of 25. At age 30 for the 1968-69 season, he had a crazy task and somewhat unenviable one of his first job, head coaching of this club, taking over for the iconic Toe Blake. But he was very well liked by his club and the players, and led the team to a 100-point season and their second straight Stanley Cup in 4th and 5 season, which I alluded to earlier. But the Habs was still playoffs in 1969-70 for the first time since 1941, despite putting up 92 points. The media and the fans ate him alive, of course. And after an 11-8-4 start in 1970-71, he stepped down in the coaching position, but was well liked enough within the organization that he took a job of director of player development, which he still had come 1979-80. He thrived in that role, helping many Habs players grow in their game and helping create the dynasty that became in the 70s. And it was felt that he could give coaching another shot at this point. Despite losing his first 4 games back behind the bench, the team would go on a 21-game unbeaten streak to end the season, finishing with a record of 47, 20, and 13 for 107 points. Not bad at all considering where they were, but still a third-best record in the NHL. And their big stars tried. Guy Lafleur set an NHL record with a 6th straight 100-point season and 6th straight 50-goal season, both previously held by Phil Esposito. Larry Robinson, the star defenseman, won his 2nd Norris Trophy as the league's top defenseman, and two-way specialist Bob Gainey won his 3rd straight Selke Trophy as the top defensive forward in the league, and a award that's actually only been around for 3 seasons. On top of that, Pierre LaRouche had a 50-goal season, Pierre Mondou's game was growing, as was defenseman Rod Langway, and Steve Shutt had an excellent year. Even so, the experts that wrote off the Habs felt that this team was now ready to have that record-tying 5 Cup wins in a row since bringing it together at the right time. And they did sweep the 14th-seeded Hartford Whalers in 3 games, but in Game 3, a vicious hit by Pat Boutette injured Guy Lafleur, ending his season. They faced the upstart North Stars in the playoff quarterfinals, and the young Stars, who had been building a hopeful contender, stunned the city of Montreal, its fans, and the hockey world by beating the Habs in 7 games, derailing the dynasty. It was a sad reality, as the Islanders several weeks later would take the throne that many anticipated they eventually would. But the Habs still remain focused and must for the 1980 NHL Draft, another great class. Now the big headline going into this draft was of course the Savard-Wickenheiser sweepstakes. Sweepstakes, easy for me to say. One of those rare draft classes that you actually didn't know who was going number 1. Montreal, due to a Sam Pollock brilliant trade maneuvering back in 1976, had the number 1 pick in 1980. Many felt the Habs were going to go with the hometown hero, Denis Savard. Now yes, Savard was born in Gatineau, Quebec, but he had become a star in Montreal with the Montreal Juniors of the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. But also, they didn't rule out the Habs going with Regina, Saskatchewan native and Regina Pats icon Doug Wickenheiser, who scored 89 goals and led his team to the WHL championship. On paper, both were fantastic picks, but the Habs always had the tradition of going with the great Quebec heroes as playmaking centers Lemaire, Henry Richard, and the outstanding Jean Beliveau have proven. But many still remembered Hall of Famer Elmer Locke, a Hall of Fame center from the Habs in the 40s and 50s. He was a native of Saskatchewan. The Habs took Wickenheiser, which on paper wasn't seen as a bad call, but the fans and the media, while not vicious about it, were very unsure. The Habs, however, made a steal of a pick in the 3rd round, taking University of North Dakota's Craig Ludwig. A towering presence on defense, 6'3" and over 200 pounds. He played the stay-at-home style of defense, and was a native of Rhinelander, Wisconsin. Hockey was all the rage with great nearby local programs in that town where he developed his game. He didn't play to be fancy, he wasn't paid to do so, but he played to be a winner. He liked to hit, liked to be vicious, and hey, he'd always fight for control of the puck to keep it out of his zone and allow the offense to take control. His skills allowed him to be key in landing the Fighting Sioux to the NCAA National Hockey Championship, their first title since 1963. In the 6th round, 124th overall, they took winger Mike McPhee out of Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Troy, New York, from the NCAA. Well, A native of Sydney, Nova Scotia, a grinding winger, he could work the boards, fight for the puck, and hey, could throw some nice checks and cover forwards and shut down top scorers. He's also a clutch scorer on the offensive side of things, and in 2 seasons with RPI, has 69 points in 53 games. And in round 8, the Habs took Shawinigan goalie Steve Penny, a goaltender who actually had a bit of size on him, which was still kind of rare in this era. He was quick and could make difficult saves. He was on a pretty bad, however, Shawinigan team, hence his 14-32-5 record with a 5.86 goals against average and an 838 save percentage. But hey, the Habs saw potential. The 1980-81 season, however, did see a lot of obstacles. Guy Lafleur had numerous injury issues, including a car accident that could have been fatal had he been struck just maybe an inch or so more over. He still had 70 points in the 51 games he played. Larry Robinson missed 15 games, but still had a great year. Bob Gainey won his 4th straight Selke. It was, however, clear that Guy Lapointe had not been the same since that 1979 playoff injury. Even Serge Savard had his struggles, but Rod Langway and Brian Engblom were emerging as defensive all-stars for the Habs. Doug Wickenheiser didn't have a very good rookie year, but some say Claude Ruel was benching him despite some games. The Habs goaltending, led by Richard Sevigny, Denis Aaron, and Bunny Larocque, gave it the least amount of goals in the league, but Larocque was actually traded to Toronto late in the year. But they were awarded the Vezina for that, and also holding the team together offensively were the likes of Schutt, Napier, Tremblay, and LaRouche. The Habs finished with a record of 45, 22, and 13 for 103 points. Once again, 3rd best record in the league. And they were facing the 14-seeded Edmonton Oilers, led by 20-year-old sensation, that little punk from Brantford, Wayne Gretzky, who set an NHL record for assists this season that year, the 109, and points for 164. Be that as it may, it was a large consensus that the Oilers as a team wouldn't have a snowball's chance in hell of beating the Habs. But other than Gretzky, nobody foresaw the 5 other future Hall of Famers that were on the team at this time. Well, the Habs were embarrassed, swept in 3 games, outscored 15-6. Not only did Gretzky decimate them, but goaltender Andy Moog, with just 7 games of NHL experience, pretty much came out of nowhere, stymieing the Habs' top stars. And there were really no bright spots. Steve Schutt was, I guess, passable in this series, but Lafleur, Savard, Tremblay, Riseborough, Lambert, Napier, and damn awful. Larry Robinson perhaps played the worst playoff series of his entire career once it was all said and done. These were guys who could win a playoff series in their sleep. Something had to give. This caused Claude Ruel to quit coaching again and go back to his director of player development role, a job he'd actually keep till 1995. And Grunman, who was, well, losing his shit, and rightfully so, I would say, hired Bob Berry as the new coach. He had done some great things with the Los Angeles Kings despite lack of playoff success, and was a native of Quebec. Now, the 1981 draft, Grunman and the scouts had their work cut out for them. They had 3 first-round picks. They took power forward and bruiser Mark Hunter, who had a good career, ended up having one anyway, defenseman Gilbert Delorme, who only played 165 games for the Habs, and Swedish stars Jan Ingman, who would never play an NHL game. They also drafted Lars Eriksson, a Swedish goalie, in the 2nd round, and never played an NHL game. Perhaps they were going a little well too often overseas at this point. But also in the 2nd round, 40th overall, the Habs took Chris Chelios of the Moose Jaw Canucks, a native of Chicago, Illinois. Many scouts passed him because they felt he didn't have the size to be an imposing defenseman. Yeah, I know. And yeah, that he played for a junior A program, the SJHL. Some saw that as him not being good enough for the major juniors. Despite that, he was a tremendous hitter, fierce competitor, aggressive, just downright nasty sometimes, and could frustrate and intimidate the opposition. He could also score, meaning his type of play would be very beneficial in the NHL in the era of the scoring defenseman. During 3 seasons in Saskatchewan, he scored 38 goals, 111 assists, and 149 points in 131 games, and amassed 361 penalty minutes. He's coming off a tremendous year in 1980-81 with 23 goals, 64 helpers, 87 points in 54 games, with 175 penalty minutes. He was named best defenseman in the SJHL. Some would say that, and a quarter would give him a double-double at Tim Hortons. But now he was off to the University of Wisconsin, one of the greatest hockey programs in all of the U.S., the infamous Badgers. In the 4th round, however, Grumman and his scouts looked to Sweden once again. However, this time it wouldn't really fail. They picked Gilles Dallin, 82nd overall, from the 3rd-tier Swedish Hockey League, playing in Timrå. He had 24 points in 41 games. A winger with speed, but a little more size than Naslund. The Habs will be monitoring his progress as he joins the Elite League and grows in his game. In the 7th round, 145th overall, the Habs took defenseman Tom Kurvers out of the University of Minnesota Duluth. Just finished 1 year in the NCAA, Kurvers is someone, again, the Habs want to monitor. Quentin may not have been the greatest GM, but he played some of these picks right and did seem to have a good relationship with his scouts and listening to them. A Minnesota native, a state where they're as passionate about hockey as much as Canada is, he showed promise in his freshman year. 6 goals, 24 assists, 30 points in 39 games, great at puck control, passing, and can shut down an offense. That was into the 1981-82 season without Serge Savard, who parted the team after 14 full seasons, and would go on to play for the Winnipeg Jets. Guy Lapointe would actually get traded to the St. Louis Blues during the season. Tiny yet feisty Keith Acton emerged as a new star in Montreal. Lafleur struggled with injuries, but still played well when he was healthy. Mark Napier had a great year. Pierre Mondu had a great season too, as did Mario Tremblay. Gainey was named team captain and proved he was more than fitting of the role, having the respect of his teammates. Chris Nyland was becoming a big fan favorite. Steve Shutt had another 30-goal season. Grinders veteran Ray-Jean Houle, Doug Jarvis, and Doug Riseborough were still producing. Defense was still excellent. Larry Robinson was still among the league best, while Langway and Engblom were still being recognized now as such too. Rookie goalie Rick Walmsley had a great year, while he and 78 Aaron allowed the least amount of goals in the league, and he and Aaron were recipients of the first ever Jennings Trophy, which took over the role what the Vezina was for least goals allowed. They finished 46-17-17 for 109 points, winning the Adams Division as the new divisional playoff format debuted this season. And the NHL's newest intense rivalry had emerged, the Battle of Quebec, and the first playoff series between the Habs and the Nordiques took place. Indeed, Montreal were the heavy favorites, but went into a fifth and deciding game, and just 22 seconds in overtime, the Habs let in a very weird and bizarre goal from proverbial thorn in the side known as Dale Hunter. Another stunning first-round exit. Grumman was getting grilled by the media, but quite honestly, for a guy who had no experience, I gotta play devil's advocate and say he wasn't doing a terrible job. He just wasn't very assertive as a leader. And yes, Habs fans may not like me saying that. And yes, he did make very, very many questionable decisions, but the Habs were still coming off their 8th consecutive 100-point season. Not like the team was outright tanking. But management was indeed a mess, and the relationship intertwined between players, coaches, scouts, and the front office was a complete disarray in this era in Montreal. And Grumman, among others, do have to shoulder some of the blame. The 1982 NHL draft wasn't great. The Habs were looking for a winger, but by the time they got to them at the 19th pick, all the best ones that round had been taken. Brian Bellows, Rich Sutter, Dave Anderchuk. They took Alain Heroux, who never played an NHL game, but passed on Patrick Flatley. Nobody in this draft class really panned out for the Habs, but it was more a matter of circumstance than Grumman's fault. But on September 9th, 1982, Grumman shook up the foundation of the club with a blockbuster trade. He's an all-star defenseman Rod Langway and Brian Engblom, along with two-way center Ironman and two-way specialist center Doug Jarvis. Forward Craig Laughlin to the lowly Washington Capitals for defenseman Rick Green and winger Ryan Walter. The media was furious in Montreal for this, and Grumman's head was called for, as even the fans weren't exactly sold on this. Langway was evolving as a superb defenseman in the league. He was a career plus 148 in 4 seasons of Montreal, and in the last 2 seasons was 3rd and 5th best in the league in that category, respectively. He also played in the last 2 NHL All-Star games with a top 10 Norris Trophy voting those years too. But there were rumors that Langway was seeking a way out of Montreal to play for an American team. Some felt it was due to better tax options with the money, but in being American, it would be a better fit for him. Ryan Engblom was coming off an epic season where he was named a second-team All-Star and was a plus 192 in 5 seasons in Montreal, led the league in plus-minus in 81, and was second in 82. He was 6th in Norris Trophy voting in the 81-82 season. Doug Jarvis, again, arguably the best face-off man in the game and maybe even the best penalty killer. A man with great heart and durability would count up 560 consecutive NHL games, not missing a single game in all 7 seasons he has played. He was a big part of all 4 Stanley Cup wins from 76 to 79. And this past season, he just missed out on being a Selke finalist, coming in 4th. And while Craig Laughlin is the overlooked member of this trade, he had only played 36 games for the Habs, all in the 81-82 season, but had 23 points and was showing promise. He was thriving in the AHL with the Nova Scotia Voyageurs with 90 points in 72 games over 2 seasons. Again, even many Habs fans hated this trade, but, well, let's see what they got in return. Now, Ryan Walter was a high-end prospect when the Caps drafted him 2nd overall in 1978. A sizable winger who also worked center. Kachuk worked the boards. He had 267 points in 307 games as a Capital in 4 seasons. He was a minus 16, which really isn't all that bad considering the team he was playing for was a team that never once made the playoffs in its entire 8-year existence. He wasn't afraid to get scrappy. If he had to get downright nasty, he would. He was second in Calder Trophy voting in his rookie year. His biggest asset, though, was his leadership. He served as team captain for all but his rookie campaign and was the youngest captain in NHL history at the time. He also has international experience playing the 79 and 81 World Ice Hockey Championships. And Walter was also very smart, a mentally tough player in addition to his physical prowess. He's coming off his best season, 38 goals, 49 assists for 87 points in 78 games, and was a -4. He was 8th in Selke Trophy voting and won a bronze medal that year, as Canada came in 3rd in the World Championship Tournament. Wow. But now let's look at defenseman Rick Green. At a towering 6'3" and over 200 pounds, the Caps saw something big in him, taking him first overall in 1976, as he was a highly touted prospect due to his success with the OHL's London Knights, and he was a hardworking defender, played that traditional style, but did add 158 points in 377 games in Washington, but was an abysmal -137. And yeah, the Caps are pretty damn bad, to be fair again, but that's still a pretty staggering number. He has also missed over 100 games due to injuries and not really seen as a durable defenseman. He, like teammate Walter, also played at the 79 and 81 Worlds, and Green is also coming off his best season with 28 points and a -12 in 65 games, and was also part of that Team Canada bronze medal winning tournament in the 82 Worlds, and he actually played very well in that tournament. As you see, the Habs weren't exactly getting a bag of pucks in return, but still, this trade was still seen as one-sided by many to this very day. But the Habs had some great news as the 82-83 season was about to commence. 3 prospects joined the team full-time. Since being drafted in 1979, Mats Naslund took home an Olympic bronze medal in Sweden, in Lake Placid in 1980. He had 10 points in 7 games in that tournament. He played in the 81 and 82 World Championships, taking home a silver in the former, and has 121 points in 108 Swedish League games in 3 seasons. Of the 1979 pick, Guy Garbeau joins the team for this season as well. In 1979-80, as final year in Chicoutimi, he racked up 72 goals, 110 assists for 182 points in 72 games, and was a second-team All-Star in the Quebec League. And in his last 2 seasons for the Nova Scotia Voyageurs, he's been superb, 182 points in 155 games in the AHL, and keeping those defensive skills sharp. And speaking of defense, 1980 draft pick Craig Ludwig has also been busy since being drafted, and is coming off leading the University of North Dakota to another NCAA championship, and was a Western Collegiate All-Star recipient in 1982 as well. The 1982-83 Montreal Canadiens finished 42, 24, and 14 for 98 points. Well, the first time the team finished with less than 100 since 1974, but it's still an excellent regular season. Mats Naslund's first NHL season saw him finish with 71 points, and he got votes for the Calder. He also led the team in plus-minus. Guy Garbeau showed promise, as did Craig Ludwig, who played in all 80 games. But how about the big men in the trade? Well, Ryan Walter had 75 points, second amongst the team, only behind Guy Lafleur. He had a career-high plus-15 and represented the Habs at the NHL All-Star Game and got some Selke votes. Rick Green did have injury issues again, but still played in 65 games and was a career-best plus-23 and made some key plays in big games. The playoffs saw the Habs again fail miserably. They were embarrassed by underdog Buffalo. Not only were they swept out in 3 games, they scored just 2 goals. Third straight first-round exit, and this, indeed, led to the end of the Irving Grundman era. Now, again, I could be stepping on pins and needles like saying this, but he's not even amongst the 10 worst GMs of all time, okay? That being said, yes, I think he was the wrong man for the job in the grand scheme of things, but still made some really good decisions. Again, that was due to a good relationship with his scouting team. And then again, I mentioned, especially when it came to certain draft picks, Grundman was on the ball. But the front office was in turmoil. Again, when you're a top-tier team reaching high 90s or 100 points a season and not getting past the first round in 3 straight years, things do have to change. Again, I'll say for a guy with no experience, he did better than he had any right to. But there were 5 big things that stand out as to why he was ultimately a failure. 1, as I mentioned, his lack of assertive leadership. Sam Pollock or Frank Selke were 2 of the Habs GMs prior to this, and those are iconic names in terms of the front office. And they did their jobs very well because they didn't mess around and made it known they were in charge. Grundman tried, but never did that, was never taken seriously in the role. Lack of communication is another. With his staff and his players, again, it wasn't there. This would come out later on, as they didn't really have the most formidable relationship with this club. Grundman just seemed to be all over the place with people. Number 3, the Capitals trade. Now, I think this one is a bit unfair. While Walter and Green both did have an excellent year, it is true. Rod Langway in one year showed he was arguably one of the best captains in the league and won his first Norris Trophy as the league's best defenseman. And Jarvis, he improved the Caps penalty kill leaps and bounds, and they led the team to their first ever winning record and playoff appearance. Yeah. Number 4, the Habs were no longer dominating the league, and never would again. This is why his name still draws ire among older Habs fans. And the biggest, at number 5, Wickenheiser over Savard. Look, Wick was well liked by his teammates and had a lot of heart, but again, never panned out as a Habs top center. He wasn't, sadly, again, as bad as it is to say, he wasn't paid just to have heart. Injuries and inconsistent play cost him to miss 65 games in 3 seasons. And the crazy irony is, he was actually coming off his best season so far in Montreal with 25 goals and 55 points, only missed 2 games playing in 78. But never once did he suit for any of the 11 playoff games in the last 3 seasons. Meanwhile, Denis Savard in Chicago had become one of the NHL's biggest stars and has come off of seasons back-to-back of 119 and 121 points, respectively, and conference finals appearances in both those playoffs in 82 and 83. Which segues into my next point. Ron Caron, who assisted Sam Pollock for years and was superb being at scouting talent. He's a big reason, again, why Grumman didn't completely shit the bed at the draft some years, but after 12 years of being a huge part of the front office, he was too seen to blame for the Wickenheiser pick. He was dismissed as director of scouting and director of player personnel, and would take a job as general manager of the St. Louis Blues. Even the best scouts make big mistakes, but in Montreal, there's just no room for that. But who is going to take Grumman's job? I mean, well, this man literally had no experience as a hockey executive or coach either, but he was an assertive leader on the ice. 14 days after Grumman's dismissal and 19 days after he played his final NHL game in the uniform of the Winnipeg Jets, Habs icon and future Hall of Famer, former captain Serge Savard was named general manager. As a player, hey, he was a cut above, a massive career plus 462, plus 439 points in 1,040 games in 16 seasons. Known for his skills as a skater, breaking up opposing attacks, and expert shot blocker, and able to play offensive strategies. But playoffs, ho! Count them up. 8 Stanley Cup rings, 130 playoff games, was the Conn Smythe Trophy winner as playoff MVP in 1969, and led the playoffs in plus-minus in 76 and 78. Speaking of plus-minus, in the regular season, he was top 10 in that category, as well as defensive point shares 7 times in his career. He was a second-team All-Star in 79, played in the infamous 1972 Canada-Russia Series, and won the 1976 Canada Cup, the very first Team Canada. Now, you're probably wondering, what does this have to do with qualifying him as a GM? Well, really doesn't. But, again, I mentioned leadership. He was one of the best and most respected by his team and organization as a whole. He began serving as team captain when Evan Cornway's injury issue started in around 1976, and took the C on his sweater full-time by 1978 and held it until 1981, his last year at the club. He always had a great leadership acumen and great relationship with his teammates, coaches, and the office, and hey, he has experience in the game. This is why Montreal media fans were pretty okay with this and felt he'd still do better than Grumman because of that. But now, how would the Sultan of the Spinorama do in his first draft on June 9, 1983 at the Montreal Forum? Well, in the first round, 17th overall, they took center Alfie Turcotte from the Portland Winterhawks. Habs were still looking for that top center. He'd played 85 games for the Habs over 3 seasons and just 27 more in the NHL after that. He did have a great AHL career and was actually quite popular in Europe until retiring from pro hockey in 1999. But again, all the top centers were taken. LaFontaine, Yzerman, even solid talents such as Dave Gagner or Dan Quinn. But in the second round, the Habs had back-to-back picks at 26 and 27 overall. Serge made a biggie at 26. Gritty and nasty winger Claude Lemieux from Trois-Rivières of the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. A native of Buckingham, Quebec, he was the ultimate pest, but tremendous in the clutch. And in his only year so far as a junior, he had 28 goals, 38 assists for 66 points in 62 games, and 187 penalty minutes. Habs were looking to build more strength on the wing as Ray-Jean Houle's career ended due to injury. That's also why they took big man and Montreal native Sergio Momesso in the next pick. In the 83-84 season, the Habs started 4-5-0, and while I wouldn't say that's necessarily a reason to panic, Serge Savard wasn't in the mood to waste time. On October 28, 1983, he made a major trade. He dealt popular forward Keith Acton, back-to-back 40-goal scorer Mark Napier, and a 1984 third-round draft pick to the Minnesota North Stars for center Bobby Smith. And a towering, playmaking center, 6'4", over 200 pounds, and able to use his size to fight for puck possession, able to control the slot and create space for teammates and wingers. Oh yeah, he could score. But drafted first overall by the Stars in 1978, in 386 games, he racked up 156 goals, 294 assists for 450 points, and was an even zero. This was the center Savard craved to drive ahead for his team. He won the Calder Trophy as league's top rookie in 1979, and his best year came in 1981-82, 114 points, and was in the top 10 for Hart Trophy voting, and got some votes for the Selke, and was again part of that Team Canada team which I mentioned earlier at the World Championships, and had a great tournament and won himself a bronze. And he could get it done in the playoffs. 55 points in 47 postseason games, leading the Stars to that miracle run to the finals in 1981. He was indeed key in the Stars' rise from annual choke to contender. But the Stars felt Neil Broughton was going to be their top centerman going forward and parted with Smith. In 10 games this season, he had 3 goals, 6 assists for 9 points, and was a -1. Things did not improve, however. The Habs finished the year 35, 40, and 5. For 75 points, their first losing record in 33 years. The Caps trade seemed to bite them badly this year. Rick Green only played 7 games. Ryan Walter was hit or miss. But Rod Langway in Washington won his second Norris Trophy. And Doug Jarvis won his first Selke Trophy. And the Caps won their first playoff series ever. Habs also finally parted with Doug Wickenheiser as well this season. Bobby Smith was actually fitting in pretty well in Montreal. Naslund had a good sophomore campaign. And Guy Lafleur, for the 8th time in his career, led the team in scoring, but it was clear he was no longer the dominant force he once was, and was actually showing visible frustration. Bob Berry was fired with 17 games remaining, and taking over was Jacques Lemaire. Yes, the former iconic Habs player was now the head coach, and the team's fortunes really didn't improve much. They went 7-10-0 with Lemaire, but still seemed a little more motivated than they were before. But they still made the playoffs too, finishing 4th in the Adams division simply because they weren't as bad as Hartford. But given the Habs' prior few seasons of first-round exits while being a top-tier club, they were virtually given no chance to thrive. However, there were some late-season call-ups made. Chris Chelios, being drafted in 1980, since then, has led the Wisconsin Badgers to the NCAA Championship in 1983, and that same year was named the All-Tournament Team and second-team Western Collegiate All-Star overall. And he represented Team USA in the 1984 Olympics and had a pretty good showing. And in 12 regular season games with the Habs, he had 2 hoppers and was a -5. Lemaire's defensive style of coaching means he wants heavy shutdown guys up front, so Mike McPhee was called up from Nova Scotia. Since being drafted in 1980, he scored 49 goals in 35 games while still attending RPI, and 80 points in 109 games in Nova Scotia in the AHL. And again, showing great defensive presence. And in 14 games this season with the Habs, he's at 7 points and is a +4. And another from the class of 1980, Steve Penny. The goaltender improved his numbers in juniors in 1980-81 with 30 wins, 4.22 goals against average, and 8.74 save percentage. And his numbers for the Flint Generals, the IHL, they weren't all that stellar. He had 4.27 goals against average over 2 seasons. And this season in Nova Scotia, he was 11-12-4, 3.51 goals against average, 8.79 save percentage, passable due to the era. But his 0-4-0 with the Habs this season, an abysmal 4.76 goals against average, a horrendous 8.35 save percentage. And here's the big bombshell: Lambert is starting him in the playoffs. The media and many fans pretty much laughed in Jacques' face for this, and I don't blame them, on paper at least. Wamsley wasn't having a great year either, nor was Sevigny, but really? A guy who hasn't even won a single NHL game he has played is what you're gambling on? Well, what happened next was nothing short of shocking. The Habs swept the heavily favored Bruins, who finished 29 points ahead of them in the opening round in 3 games straight. And this kid who hadn't won a game all year, Steve Penny, allowed just 2 goals in 3 games. The Habs' first playoff series win since 1980. Then it was an infamous playoff series win over the Nordiques in 6 games. The Nordiques finished 19 points ahead of the Habs and were favored to take it as well. And it culminated in what is known as the Good Friday Massacre. Fights, brawls, brutality, you name it. But the Habs make it to their first semifinal series since 1979. And they faced the 4-time defending Cup champion New York Islanders. They took a 2-0 series lead, but would ultimately lose in 6 games. Despite this, however, there was hope in Habland once again. Chelios was superb in the playoffs. Steve Penny was sensational. Mike McPhee played a huge role. Mats Naslund shined in his first big postseason run, and Larry Robinson was looking like a man who won the Conn Smythe as playoff MVP in '78. Lemaire was going to be the team's coach going forward. The 1984 NHL draft was historic for many reasons. It was the first to be televised on CBC, carrying the proceedings, and the hype was surrounding one of the most highly talented prospects of all time, an 18-year-old Montreal native named Mario Lemieux, who was smashing records in junior hockey left and right. But as for the Habs, they were in a good spot as they parted ways with forward Pierre LaRouche back in December of 1981 to Hartford, and they received the 1984 first-round pick because of it. See, Grumman did do good sometimes. And, hey, chose 5th overall, and they went with Czechoslovakian defenseman Here's Svoboda, a tremendous shot blocker with fast skating abilities and not afraid to assert physical prowess and presence, had great passing skills, and was able to move the puck efficiently. His defection from his native land to play NHL hockey was a story quite like his countrymen, very dramatic, the Stastny brothers, 4 years earlier. After playing in the European Junior Championships in West Germany, he opted not to go home, and Serge Savard had him flown in for the draft with every intent on picking him, and actually had him sequestered in the hotel until the draft was literally about to get underway. With Litvinov in the Czech League, he had 4 assists in 22 games, but showed that prowess, and it was showing big time in the '84 World Juniors where he led Czechoslovakia to a bronze medal. That's where he got the most attention from his scouts. Savard kept busy in the draft. He parted ways with Rick Wamsley, along with 2 second-rounders and a third-rounder that year, for the Blues' first-round pick, which was a few picks later, which ended up being Shane Corson. Very good pick. And a second-round pick, 29th overall, taking winger Stefan Richer. A tremendous skater with size, quickness, and a quick and powerful shot. Tremendous clutch scorer. In his first year in junior hockey, playing for the ever sad and terrible Granby Bisons of the Quebec Major Junior League, he had 39 goals, 37 assists for 76 points. But they're also looking for a dynamic winger as Lafleur gets older. They're trying to build more strength on the core. Also, when the Habs parted with Robert Picard to the Jets this past November, they gave them a third-round, 51st overall pick, and they used it to take Granby Bison's goaltender, Patrick Waugh. He was a taller goaltender, but still out of size where he was quick, and scouts were impressed with his unique butterfly stance style, his ability to drop down and pick himself back up in an instant. And also efficient in not giving up any rebounds, really. A tremendous glove reach and his ability at playing many angles. He, however, did indeed play for the Granby Bisons in 2 seasons. His record of 42, 64, and 2 wasn't anything to really smile about, nor was his 5.35 goals against average or 858 save percentage. But when you zero in on his most recent season, again, playing for the dead last team in Quebec Junior Leagues, 29, 29, and 1, 4.44 goals against average, and 874 save percentage, and a shutout. It's easy to see why the Habs were interested, as, again, he pulled this off on a very bad club. Nobody realized just how big this draft would turn out for the Montreal Canadiens. Less than a week after the draft on June 13, 1984, the Habs sent forward Perry Turnbull to the Winnipeg Jets for veteran winger Lucien Debois. Debois has size, speed, physicality, not afraid to work the boards, and he can score. 572 career games in 7 seasons. He had 172 goals, 160 assists for 232 points. He has 6 consecutive 20-goal seasons, and 7 in his career overall. But, oh man, an abysmal minus 131. But a lot of that came from playing the mediocre Jets and the horrendous Colorado Rockies. So his career did begin with the New York Rangers. He is coming off his best season, however, a career-high 34 goals, 45 assists, and 79 points in 80 games. Again, all career highs. So this is a good grab for the Habs. While Montreal was keen on going forward with Steve Penny as their top goalie, they felt they needed more veteran depth in net. And 2 days before the start of the season, the Habs made another deal with the Jets on October 9, 1984, sending goalie Mark Holden, who has spent pretty much his whole career in the minors and played in 4 NHL games, goes to Winnipeg in exchange for Doug Sodart. In parts of 9 NHL seasons, Sodart has a decent 83, 81, and 34 record, 4.10 goals against average, 868 save percentage. Isn't much to celebrate, but he's playing again for a lot of mediocre clubs in a high-scoring era, and that can do that to you. He spent his first 5 seasons as a backup for the Rangers, spending a lot of time in the AHL and actually doing pretty well there. He became one of their top goalies, however, in 1980-81, which caught the eye of the Jets for the 81-82 season, where he has been their top goaltender pretty much. And he is coming off this season where he finished 18, 15, and 7, not bad. 4.29 goals against average, 869 save percentage, not great. But still on a team like the Habs that is very defensive savvy, he could thrive. The 1984-85 season indeed saw the ongoing transition from the old guard to the new. Guy Lafleur's ice time had been cut severely due to the strategy of Jacques Lemaire, and now his former teammate and current coach, they couldn't get on the same page. And after 14 seasons, the icon would retire from the game of hockey, at least for a few years. Also, Steve Shutt, another future Hall of Famer, he was traded after 10 games, but the young Habs seem to be meshing with the veterans. Tom Kerber's also joined the club this year and looked pretty solid. Habs' young guns were really, really good. So good, as a matter of fact, that 4 of them got Calder Trophy votes. Chelios came in second. Steve Penny came in third, meaning they were both finalists, but of course they lost to the great Mario Lemieux. Kerbers and Mike McPhee also got votes. Peter Svoboda showed a lot of promise in his rookie year. Mats Naslund was on fire. Guy Carbonneau got votes for the Selke. The Habs finished 41, 27, and 12 for 94 points, and finishing first in the Adams division. Come playoff time, the Habs needed all 5 games, but still overcame the Bruins, and then in the next round, the best of 7 division finals, the Battle of Quebec Part 3. It's a little less violent this year, but hey, the scraps were still there. Went to Game 7, and went to overtime, and Peter Stastny ended their season. The Habs playoff woes again reared their ugly heads, but then came a shocker. Jacques Lemaire stepped away as head coach. He didn't like dealing with the savage Montreal media as a player, and he also didn't like dealing with them as a coach. So he took a job as assistant general manager and director of hockey operations, still staying with the Habs. But Lemaire had a unique strategy known as the neutral zone trap, which kind of made its rumblings and debut in this era, but really didn't take full shape until a decade later and, well, would pretty much change the scope of the league. But after this 84-85 season, they do have young talents. The veterans are still producing, but they don't have a coach. Also, Pierre Mondu was forced to retire due to an eye injury, and Bobby Smith, while he did fit into Jacques' strategy, wasn't really delivering like many had hoped. So, now the core of the story begins as the Habs prepare for the 1985-86 season. The first process, of course, to begin a new season is the 1985 NHL entry draft, and this draft class, 40 years later, has looked back at one of the weaker ones, but they did have a lot of solid players, but sadly a lot of the ones that the Habs were seeking were taken, and by the time they got to the 12th and 16th overall picks, well, first at 12th, Jose Charbonneau, a winger from Drummondville, only played 25 games for Montreal, that is, and Tom Tversky, a high schooler from Minneapolis, only played 71 games for Montreal, but actually would go on to play nearly 600 in his NHL career. Fourth round pick Brent Gilchrist joined Montreal in 1988 and played 236 games to them as a solid grinding forward. He added 556 more, totaling 792 career NHL games, and even won some Stanley Cups in Detroit. Donald Dufresne played 101 of his 268 career NHL games for Montreal. Out of these 15 picks, 8 of them played in the NHL, 6 of them played for Montreal, but I think Gilchrist, nobody played, more than 200. And the Habs, well, they only got a combined 450 games out of this bunch, but actually still fared better than many teams did in this draft class. You'll see here in the last draft pick, however, that John Ferguson Jr., a name you might recognize. He was the son of Habs legend John Ferguson, who at the time at this draft was the GM of the Winnipeg Jets. But Fergie Jr. never played a single NHL game, but he has been an executive in the front office and worker in the NHL since 1993, notably during a 5-year tenure as general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs. So he works for the Utah Mammoth as assistant GM and is the GM of their AHL affiliate in Tucson. But now Montreal needs a coach, and they hire one that's already on their staff. They decide that 38-year-old Jean Perron, who Serge Savard really is keen on, is the man for the job. He's hired because he felt he'd already helped mold the young talent on this team, and is very heavy on player evaluation. He was tough, a bit of an authoritarian, which is a bit of a risk in the modern game, and before hitting the NHL, he was best known for coaching the University of Moncton from 1973 to 83, where he won back-to-back Canadian national titles in 81 and 82. He was then an assistant coach to Dave King on Team Canada's 1984 Olympic team. Now, the media and even some of the fans were not sold on this choice completely, but they didn't exactly crap on it either. But also going into this season, there's something I have to point out. The Sherbrooke Canadiens, who had moved from Nova Scotia, well, they were now the Habs farm team and won the 1985 Calder Cup, which is the AHL championship for those who don't know. This had to be a great sign for the Habs, as this team was reviewed thoroughly by Perron, and seeing who could be beneficial to the Habs roster this season. And one of those immediately rewarded during a great training camp was the man who led the way to that championship victory was center Brian Scrudlin. Overlooked in both the 81-82 drafts, he went unselected, tried again in 83, still nothing. Despite being a powerful presence for the WHL Saskatoon Blades, the Peace River, Alberta native had 77 goals, 115 assists for 192 points, 274 penalty minutes, in 208 games. He was a no-nonsense grinding center, tremendous checking abilities, could layouts and physicality, was seen as a very strong leader. Now, the NHL may have overlooked him, but he made his way to Nova Scotia in the AHL. In 126 games, split over 2 seasons, 35 goals, 40 assists for 75 points. But his play in the 1985 AHL playoffs is what stood out. 17 points in 17 games, hitting anyone who came near him, winning faceoffs, working the boards, great shutdown game. He was named playoff MVP. Scrudlin was a master of the ice out there, and Perron liked him. And he won himself a spot on the main roster because of it. Another key component of that team was Buffalo, New York-born Mike Lawler. Now, he went unnoticed, and again overlooked in the 82-83 draft. He was a tough and physical traditional style defender who wasn't afraid to get aggressive and downright mean. He was a very popular fixture amongst fans in Brantford as a member of the Alexanders in the OHL. He racked up 227 penalty minutes. His offensive input wasn't anything to seize at. He had 56 points over 2 seasons, 40 of which coming in his second. And he landed in Nova Scotia in 83, winning a spot on the Voyageurs in 2 seasons. He racked up 14 goals, 34 assists for 48 points, 146 games, and just under 200 penalty minutes. But with the Habs defense pretty much more or less set, it was going to be hard for him to win a roster spot on this team. But eventually he'll receive the call. And Montreal had 3 more rookies joining the club. First, Stéphane Richer. His final year in junior in 84-85 was split between Granby and Chicoutimi. And what a year! 61 goals, 59 assists, 120 points in 57 games. And if that wasn't enough, he reported the Sherbrooke Canadiens for the latter part of the playoffs, had 9 points in 9 games, and was part of that Calder Cup team. Now he moved to his former Granby teammate, Patrick Waugh, who was going to be given a chance because of a great training camp. Despite the fact that he was drowning in Granby during his 80-45 season, his last in juniors, with a 16-25-1 record, 5.55 goals against average, and an .872 save percentage. However, he did see his first bit of pro hockey action, playing one scoreless period for the Habs on February 23rd, 1985, facing 2 shots and being credited with a win over the Jets. And he too was called to Sherbrooke for the playoffs. He went 10-3 with a 2.89 goals against average en route to the Calder Cup win. And also finally joining Montreal this season, Swedish import Kjell Dahlin. Since being drafted in 1981 in the last 4 seasons in the Swedish Pro Leagues, 66 goals, 49 assists, 115 points, 139 games. And between 2 World Junior Championships in 82 and 83, he scored 13 points in 14 games. The Habs have quite the core of young talent, but this won't get them overly far alone, as they still have 3 seasoned vets from their Stanley Cup glory days. Let's take a look. First, Mario Tremblay. Entering his 12th season, he's just 29 years old still. He's a hard-working, hard-nosed winger. He could drop the gloves if he had to, and could power his way to the net, fighting for the puck and getting goals any which way he can. In 11 seasons, he notched 239 goals, had a 306 assists for 545 points in 796 games, and a huge plus 181, nearly 1,000 penalty minutes. He, of course, was part of those string of 4 straight Stanley Cup victories from 76 to 79, playing very well in the 79 win. He has reached 20 goals 6 times, and out of that has reached 30 goals 4 times. And coming off one of the best seasons of his career, 31 goals, 35 assists for 66 points in 75 games, at plus 21, and 120 minutes in the sin bin, and great on Montreal's power play. He's one of the team's alternate captains to boot, a huge fan favorite, and his consistent play is definitely beneficial. Then there's another alternate captain, defenseman, entering his 14th season, the man known affectionately as Big Bird, Larry Robinson. Lately, he has been a mentor to Chelios and Ludwig in their emergence, and at this point has already punched his own ticket to the Hall of Fame. A heavy physical presence, yet a clean-hitting defenseman, an incredible playmaker leading rushes out of his zone. He could work all ends of the ice, anchor power plays, lead penalty kills. His passing skills and setup game were superb. Plus a booming shot. Hey, these gave him great offensive numbers, as in 155 goals, 526 assists, 681 points, and 927 games. And get this, a career plus 594. The last couple of years, he has passed the NHL's all-time leader in that category, the great Bobby Orr. He's won a Norris Trophy twice in the league as a top defenseman in 1977 and 1980. Was a finalist 3 other times and got votes in another season. He's a 3-time first-team All-Star, 2-time second-team All-Star. And I mentioned plus-minus, well, he led the league with a ridiculous plus 120 in 1976-77, which to this day is the second-best season mark of all time. He's been in the top 10 5 other times. In 1977, he was also first in total goals on ice for, and since then has been in the top 10 3 other times. He's also first in defensive point shares in 77 and 78, and again, top 10 7 other times, including the most recent season. He's also been in the top 10 in league assists 3 times. Again, he led all defensemen in scoring, and yes, you guessed it, 76-77. He has played in 6 NHL All-Star games, and, oh, by the way, I haven't even got to the playoffs yet. 5-time Stanley Cup champion, his first in his rookie year of 73, and then that's where he truly broke out. Then, of course, he was part of those 4 straight wins, but it was his performance in the 1978 playoffs that was truly brilliant. 4 goals, 17 assists, 21 points, and a massive plus 21 in 15 games. Leading in both scoring and plus-minus, was awarded the Conn Smythe Trophy as playoff MVP. In 134 playoff games, Robinson has scored 19 goals, 67 assists for 86 points, and a tremendous plus 79. And how about internationally? He's played in 3 Canada Cup tournaments, winning in 76 and 84. Was actually named player of the game twice during the 84 tournament. But more importantly, he was credited as the team captain, bringing a team that was full of tension, I should say, between the Oilers and Islanders players on the team that year, he brought everything together and was a huge part of that. He also played in the 1981 Canada Cup tournament in a losing cause, and a few months prior, played in his first and only World Championship tournament in 1981. There were some fools who had written Robinson off come 1984, but again, his performance in the playoffs that year and the Canada Cup showed he had a lot left. He was coming off the 80-45 season of 14 goals, 33 assists for 47 points in 76 games, and an excellent plus 33, and second in league defensive point shares. And of course with him, the fearless leader himself, the team captain since 1981, Bob Gainey. He was headstrong, passionate about the game, made every shift count. He was the ultimate shutdown forward, penalty killer, could check at all ends of the ice. Throw a nice hit here and there, a great puck stealer, neutral zone master, a nightmare for top forwards, focused, determined, a great leader. And yeah, he could score now and again too. Soviet goaltender and icon, Hall of Famer the great Vladislav Tretiak said that Gainey was one of the best and greatest players he'd ever gone up against. He's about to enter his 13th season, and in that time he's accumulated 190 goals, 213 assists for 403 points in 906 games, and an excellent plus 169. In the 1977-78 season, the NHL decided to introduce the Frank J. Selke Trophy, which is to be awarded to the top defensive forward in the league. Gainey won it in its first 4 years of existence, 78, 79, 80, and 81. And after that, he was a runner-up in 82, and in 83, 84, and 85, he still has gotten votes. He's gotten votes for every year so far that this trophy has been in existence. He has played in 4 NHL All-Star games, but the edge he gives in the playoffs is truly something else. As a needed part of the 4 straight Stanley Cup wins for the Habs, accounting for all his rings, I mentioned earlier, was the playoff MVP, consummate trophy winner in 1979, the Habs' last Cup win at this point. That infamous photo I showed earlier in this video, hoisted on his teammates' shoulders and hoisting the cup. Last days of glory. His importance to this team cannot be stressed enough. But like Robinson, he has excelled internationally as well. Winner of the 1976 Canada Cup, played in the 81 tournament, took home back-to-back bronze medals in the 82-83 World Championships, receiving high praise for how he played in the latter. But now, he's entering his 5th season as captain. But some even dare question his leadership amongst the fans and the media. Very minuscule, I might add. But it's only simply because he has yet to win a cup as the captain. Hey, sometimes that's Montreal for you. And the odds makers had their preseason numbers. They had the Montreal Canadiens at 800-1 odds, tied for 6th best with their division rivals the Nordiques and the Sabres in winning it all. And out of the 5 teams ahead of them, 4 of them were Wales Conference rivals. I mean, Montreal, it's pretty much to say, will make the playoffs, maybe even win their division. But it's simply going to be another status quo year. As a matter of fact, one publication stated during its 1985-86 NHL season preview that the Habs are solid and deep enough for a playoff berth, but very little more. And despite veteran presence, promising young players, and emerging stars like Mats Naslund, and their goaltending may be an issue, as there's actually no clear-cut number 1 at this point. And they feel the team is just too young to make a sizable dent in the league. Meaning, no reclaiming of Lord Stanley, they believe. Whew. Now here we are. Season's about to commence. The Habs are ready to dress 2 veteran legends for opening night and the multi-time champions, but Tremblay will miss opening night. They depend on 5 rookies, including a goaltender getting his first start, as indeed the goaltending situation in Montreal does seem to have Perron's kind of spinning his wheels in his head, not sure who to go with for the long haul. Does he go with rookie Waugh? Or does he go with Steve Petty, who's proven himself, or veteran Doug Soder? For second-year players, there's also a lot to put some hope into as well. As the dreaded sophomore jinx, hey, it's known to hit in pro sports. 3 other players have less than 5 seasons under their belt, but 5 more have vast experience. What's about to happen is anyone's guess, as it's time for opening night. So here we are, Thursday, October 10th, 1985, opening night on the road, as the Montreal Canadiens will travel to Pittsburgh to take on the Penguins. It'll be the showdown between 2 men who 5 days prior each celebrated their 20th birthday and had faced each other multiple times in the Quebec Major Junior League. And Patrick Waugh is indeed getting the start in that for the Habs, the first start of his career. And Mario Lemieux, he's coming off an epic rookie season, and despite playing for the lowly Pens, he's ready to take the NHL on by storm further and further. But 2:44 into Waugh's first start, he allowed a power play goal. 25 seconds later, Guy Carbonneau got it back to the point to Larry Robinson, who scores on veteran Gilles Meloche. The game is tied 1-1. But just 1:09 later, Mario did what he had done so many times in junior and scored a goal on Waugh. The Habs didn't lose focus, however, and as the period was winding down, run a power play, Swoboda slides to pairing partner Robinson, who puts on the goal for Gilles Dallin for his first career NHL goal. 2-2 is tied after 1. Waugh makes some huge saves in the second period, as even Mario can't get anything past the youngster. But Meloche on the other end is also stopping Montreal every which way. It's still 2-2 after 2. And in the third period, it's much of the same until the 11-minute mark, as Chelios sends in Carbonneau, who can't get it, but it goes back to Rick Green, who scores his 35th career NHL goal, and makes it 3-2 Habs. 3:33 later, Craig Ludwig clears up the puck out of the zone, gets it to Carbonneau, who goes on goal with Naslund. He scores 4-2 Habs. Carbonneau, his third apple of the game. The Pens, however, do get one back, close the gap to 4-3, but 1:12 later, with 2:26 to play, Dubois gets it to Richer and sets up Naslund on the other wing, his second goal of the game. And Montreal starts the season right with a 5-3 win in Pittsburgh. An epic game for Guy Carbonneau, as he was Mr. Playmaker on this night with 3 assists, all primary. Naslund was on fire, Larry Robinson played a beauty, while Svoboda and Gainey, and even glove dropper Chris Nyland, who didn't do so on this night, had great games, making key plays for the Habs. Richer gets his first career NHL point, Dallin gets his first career goal, won his first career start, made some big saves, after a bit of a sluggish start, mind you, and gets his first win as a starter. And now for the home opener. October 12, 1985, the Montreal Forum is back to the gills, as much of the hockey-loving nation is tuning in on CBC's Hockey Night in Canada. Montreal's opposition, the Chicago Blackhawks, fresh off a year where they made the conference finals for the third time in 4 seasons, led by, Denis Savard, as well as other star forwards such as Steve Larmer and Al Secord, and commanded by Darryl Sutter. Defenseman Doug Wilson, he has a lot of Robinson style in many ways. And starting in net for them is goaltender Warren Skorodenski getting the start. As to the Habs, they're without Peter Svoboda for the next couple games, is indeed Mike Lawler gets the call, and Sergio Mamesa will sit up in place of Tremblay tonight. Steve Petty gets the start in net. The Forum is ready to roar, and indeed they do. Just 4:12 in, Dallin gets it to Skrudland, who sits up Ryan Walter at the side of the net. The Habs draw first blood. Just 2:28 later, on the power play, Smith at center, to Naslund on the open wing, back to Curvers, who slaps it home. 2-0 Montreal leads. The Hawks do get on the board, 2-1 Montreal after 1. But just 1:06 into the second period, Robinson, as he does oh so well, anchors from the point, and yes indeed, sails it over to Dallin, who throws it up to Naslund, who scores 3-1. Savard closes the gap to 3-2 later in the period, but 1:17 later, Richer gets a cross-ice to Naslund, who goes in with Dubois, centers it for him, and Lucien scores 4-2 Montreal after 2. What a game so far for the man the Habs, now affectionately referred to as Le Petit Viking. 7:09 into the third, power play, Dallin to Robinson, who puts it on a goal for Richer. He scores career goal number 1 at a 4:21. 5-2 Montreal. Savard does get another, makes it 5-3. But with 1:26 to play, Carbonneau steals the puck and goes on net with Naslund. He scores back-to-back 2-goal games for Le Petit Viking. And hey, adding 2 assists for 4 points in the Canadiens' 6-3 win over the Blackhawks. Naslund is just scorching out there. Dallin plays amazing with 3 assists, showing that he's the real deal early on. Rookie Richer also shows fire with a notch and an apple each. Robinson looked great again. Carbonneau plays solid. Curvers was excellent here. Skrudland gets his first career NHL point. And Steve Petty had a good game with 28 saves. And of course throughout the season, but mainly spotlighted on Hockey Night in Canada, the end of Game 3 stars are kept track of to determine the Molson Cup winner. And indeed, the Molson Cup 3 stars in this night, Mats Naslund, of course, is the first star, while countryman and rookie Gilles Dallin is second star. The Swedish Sensations are off to a great start. Habs as a whole are being commended for their big guns delivering in the first 2 games. And things go to hell pretty quick, as the Habs lose 4 straight. They weren't just bad, they were awful here. Outscored 27-10, all against division rivals. I kid you not. First a trip to Boston Garden, and without Dallin or Skrudland. And Green is out too, already injured. Waugh gets lit up like the Griswold Christmas tree using LED lights, letting in all goals in a 7-2 loss. Naslund, however, continued his streak of goals, scoring 1. And this game is also notable for the pro debut of Shane Corson. Then it was a 6-0 loss to Buffalo at home. Eek. Unlikely heroes Sean McKenna and Gates Orlando destroy them. Tom Barrasso shuts them out. And Curvers is horrendous. Chalios is pretty bad. Some are saying Momesso is an overgrown pylon and needs to be sent back to Sherbrooke. Penny allows all goals on 34 shots. Then an 11-6 loss in Hartford against the rising Whalers squad, who've been basement dwellers for years, led by Ron Francis, Kevin Deneen, and Sylvain Thorjean. Penny allowed 5 goals on 13 shots in 14 minutes. Needs to say his night was done. Watt didn't fare any better, 6 goals on 18 shots. Both goalies are roasted like Swiss Chalet by the Montreal media, or I guess in Quebec it'd be St. Hubert. However, the rookies shine through. Richer and Dallin each had 2 goals and a helper. Naslund is called out for a terrible performance, as is Chelios, and Momesso isn't winning any new fans. Then at home, they host Peter Stastny, Michel Goulet, Dale Hunter, and the undefeated big-time rival Quebec Nordiques. The Habs, however, did show a lot more life here and were more aggressive in this game, but still lost 3-2. The Savage media and fans let the Habs have it. Bobby Smith was actually awful in this stretch. He hasn't looked good at all, really, this season. Carbonell and Gainey were also taken to task. Some say Patrick Waugh should be sent back to Sherbrooke. The injury bug has hit the Habs pretty hard as they've now lost Debois. But even with injuries and even some healthy scratches, Perron and Savard take the most flack, saying they're just calling up and using the wrong guys. Either way, 4 losses, each to a division rival. Not good. Canadiens, however, did get back at one of their rivals, the Sabres, on the road at the Odd, and Bob Gainey answered his critics emphatically with a goal and a helper each. His goal was a short-handed effort that was the game winner in a 5-4 triumph. Dallin, as well as call out Serge Boisvert, had a goal and assist each, and Naslund roared back with 2 goals in this game, and Bobby Smith also shut up his critics with 2 assists. Waugh also had a solid game, 27 saves. Then it was time to get one up on the Whalers, a 5-3 win. Naslund is a beast here, 2 goals and assists, 3 points, while Wyan Walter had 3 apples on the day for his best game of the year so far. And the rookie hotshots Dallin and Richer are both incredible again, a goal and a helper each for both. But it was back down again, another loss to the Nordiques, this one at Le Colisée. The Habs were down 6-1, but made it look better with a late surge with 3 goals and losing 6-4. So might only call up Steve Rooney, who's been very ineffective so far this season, scored a goal and an assist. Then it was a heartbreaking 5-4 loss to end the month to the defending Wales Conference champions, the Philadelphia Flyers. The Habs were leading 4-3 at the end of the second, but they fell apart in the third. Doug Sodark gets his first start of the year. He didn't look all that great. Bobby Smith had a goal and 2 helpers for 3 points, playing his best game of the year so far, while Chelios also played well with a goal and a helper. Robinson Savoda, however, had a pretty ugly night. Whew, not a good start. 4-6-0 in the first 10 games of the year for 8 points. Dead last in the Adams division. Okay, way too early to panic, yes. But this is Montreal we're talking about. The papers, the radio, the TV, the fans, all calling out the Habs with their poor start. Only 3 points out of 4 is not really a huge deal, especially this early, but in a competitive division like the Adams division, which is pretty close all year round, it seems, some are already signaling danger, danger. But Perron is called out for his lack of coaching savvy and saying that despite injuries, again, the call-ups just are not developing, which falls on Claude Ruel, too. Now, this team is not on the same page, it seems. There's just so many inconsistent individual performances that nothing is coming together, and it's hindering them. They're averaging a very good 3.4 goals a game, but allowing more than 5. Not good. Well, to no surprise, Mats Naslund led the month of October in scoring, literally averaging a goal a game. 10 goals, adding 5 assists for 15 points, and despite a couple rough outings and being a -2, he was seen as the Habs' big delivery man with very epic performances and still more consistent than just about anyone else. Then the rookies really came to play. Joel Dallin is really making a splash in Montreal, winning fans. He missed just 1 game. He had 6 goals, 6 assists for 12 points in 9 games. It was a -1, but he's showing some great spark very early on. Stefan Richer is actually exceeding the expectations of many. 4 goals, 7 assists for 11 points, 3rd in team scoring, and showing flashes of brilliance out there and looking ready to conquer the league. But it seems the Habs can't get it together when it comes to overall forwards. Fans are calling for Bobby Smith to be traded, and actually rumors are starting to swirl at this point. He did have 8 points, but was a -8, and played some terrible games. But he also played very well in a couple, but that isn't seen as enough. Ryan Walter, the other big veteran forward, has been solid defensively. He's not 7 points, but isn't being seen as being strong consistently. Mike McPhee had a very bad month, was a -6. Fans could understand why Sergio Momesso was even being given a chance whatsoever. A team worst, -10. Brian Skrudland was showing some promise, however, and playing with a lot of heart. Bob Gainey, the team captain, despite a couple rough games, overall was really good. Keith Carbonneau on many nights was probably the hardest working guy out there. And call-up Serge Boisvert, who played very well in many games. Steve Rooney wasn't seen as much, nor was Shane Corson, as the only 3 games he'd play all year would be this month. Doublewall was playing really well before getting hurt. Chris Nyland looked good too, but only stood up for a few games. Keith Carbonneau was the club's best defensive forward all month. Indeed, in a month where the Habs struggled defensively, he led the team with a +3, working his tail off out there and contributing to the penalty kill a great deal. Tied with him was enforcer Chris Nyland, who only played 3 games, missing many due to injury, but was also a healthy scratch a couple times, which would start to cause tension with Coach Perron. And indeed, the Habs' puzzling struggles on defense were, however, immune to the great Larry Robinson, who actually did have a very good month. He only played bad in the final game of the month in October against the Flyers, but overall he had a goal, 6 assists, and 7 points, and was consistent all the way through. It was an even 0, still throwing out some hits when he needed to as well. Now, Chris Chelios, the man deemed the future of the Habs defense, played very well in the first couple of games of the season in the wins, but has dropped off dramatically, but was starting to pick it up again by the end of the month. Tom Curvers went hot and cold. Mike Lawler, the call-up for Sherbrooke, well, not disastrous by any means, wasn't really making much of an impact. Craig Ludwig was also a bit of a disappointment, faltering in many games. Peter Svoboda went hot and cold too. Rick Green's injury issues are again a problem. And defense on all ends of the ice is where the Habs are usually a cut above the rest for many years, but it's clear Perron is lukewarm at keeping Lemaire's trap strategy intact, and needs to give his skaters an identity as a whole. The goaltending isn't much better. Rookie Patrick Waugh was seen as an early wash, 2-3-0, a terrible 4.84 goals against average, a truly bad 817 save percentage. He did play pretty good in the games he won, but was not even remotely good otherwise, it seemed. And talks were swirling at him again, taking a trip back to the minors. Steve Benny wasn't much better either, 2-2-0, a horrible 5.44 goals against average, and an abysmal 824 save percentage. Again, played pretty good in the wins, but otherwise was a disaster. And Doug Soder's only starting game of the month wasn't good. It was a loss. He allowed 5 goals. The Habs' goaltending situation was already murky before the season started. This isn't helping. Starting in November, the Habs were hosting Mario and the Pens at the Forum, and it looked bad. The Habs were down 4-1 in the third period, but Captain Bob comes alive. He scores to cut the gap in half. 54 seconds later, set up longtime teammate Larry Robinson to close the gap to 4-3. On the power play, which is under 7 minutes to play, Chelios was on goal for Richer. The Habs get the point on a 4-4 tie. Beauty of a game from Gainey, Chelios, and they play really well, as does Naslund once again, and Richer continues to shine as Rick Green returns to the lineup. Then it was a 5-game road trip coming up, which didn't exactly have Habs fans all that excited. However, there was a huge 8-3 win over division rivals Hartford. Chelios is a monster here. My goodness, 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points. Naslund had another beauty of a game with 3 assists. And then a huge surprise was Sergio Momesso, 2 goals, an assist, 3 points, perhaps saving himself a trip to the minors. But Smith came alive again with a goal and a helper and was a +3 too. Gainey was also staying hot with 2 assists and a +3. This was the most cohesive the Habs have looked so far this season. Then it was on to Minnesota to face Broughton, Bellows, Cicerelli, Nilsson, Hartsburg, and the Stars, where Claude Lemieux, who has played 9 games over 2 seasons for the Habs, makes his debut this season getting the call. Montreal was trailing 3-2 with 6:46 left. McVie and Smith went on goal, but Kermers caught the rebound, tying the game 3-3, and that's how it would stay. Walter and Richer had the other goals, and the likes of Gainey, Skrudland, Momesso, and Carbonneau, as well as Robinson and Chelios, gave the Stars top guns, especially Bellows and Cicerelli, a pretty rough night. Then the Canadiens flew to the coast to take on superstars Marcel Dion, Dave Taylor, Bernie Nichols, and the crappy Kings. And the Habs dominate them 6-0, and Chris Chelios again on ice for all 6 goals. A massive +6. He has really come alive since late October, showing great presence on the ice in any given shift. Kerr's played another beauty, and he has looked sharp since returning to injury with 2 helpers and a +3. Bobby Smith also had 2 helpers and was a +2, lately looking a lot like the guy who played in Minnesota 4 years ago. Stevan Richer, wow, making an early case of the Calder Trophy with 2 goals, an assist, and 3 points, and a +3. Speaking of rookies, Dallin had been in a bit of a slump but broke it with a goal. Momesso stays hot, a goal, a helper, +3. Naslund has the same. Robinson plays a beauty. Carbonneau wasn't giving Dion any room to breathe. Sutter gets the Habs' first shutout of the year with 22 saves. Next was a trip to the island. The New York Islanders were not quite the dominant force they used to be, but they could still win a game, and they were still a very good team on any given night. And Patrick Waugh, the rookie who faced much criticism, was the star on this night, stopping 30 of 32 shots for the best game of his young career at this point, stopping Mike Bossy 5 times and Pat LaFontaine 6 times. A huge game for the youngster, a 3-2 win. Ryan Walter with 2 helpers, Naslund, Dallin, and Riche with the goals. Habs are now unbeaten in 5 to begin November, and they're praised for finally seemingly bringing it all together. And they look very sharp on the road, and the stars are delivering and the youngsters are emerging. The defense is improving, as is the goaltending. However, the streak came to a halt in a 5-2 loss to goalie John Van Beesbrook and the New York Rangers. Smith and Momesso got the goals to the Habs. 3 days later, however, it was a 2-2 tie with the Rangers at home. The game that saw Mario Tremblay play his first game of the year. Bobby Smith with 2 assists, Craig Ludwig playing the best he has so far this season. And Rick Green actually played really well here too, as did Gainey and McPhee as they both score the goals. Then Montreal roared back emphatically at home against division rivals Boston. Mats Naslund, what more can you say? A goal, 3 assists, 4 points. Dallin was back in the swing of things after a bit of a dry spell, 2 goals and an assist for 3 points. Larry Robinson plays just a little more aggressive against Boston on any given night, and this was no different. He, Chelios, and Svoboda, who also played great, were chasing down counterpart superstar Ray Borg constantly, and a big reason why star forward Barry Peterson couldn't get a shot on goal. Guy Carbonneau was also on his tail to boot, and Tremblay gets his first goal of the year, while stops 22 of 24 shots. But next up, oh boy, on November 20th, the Montreal Canadiens will host the NHL's most powerful, dominant presence, the 2-time defending Stanley Cup champion, Edmonton Oilers. And indeed, the gang is all here. Wayne Gretzky still rewriting the NHL record book. Also, Yari Kuri, Mark Messier, Glenn Anderson, another record breaker and defenseman Paul Coffey, as well as Kevin Lowe, Charlie Hoodie, and pesky yet effective players such as Esa Tikkanen and Mike Krushelnyski. And in net, Andy Moog. Steve Penny gets to start for the Habs in this big game. Habs' strategy going into it was simple. Put pressure on Moog, contain Gretzky as best you can. Easier said than done, I know. It looked bad early as Crusher Krushelnyski struck .328 in, but Montreal remained focused as Tremblay fights for the puck, gets across to Naslund and Walter, he scores! The Oilers retake the lead late in the period. It's 2-1 after 1. Former Montreal forward Mark Napier made it 3-1 in the second, but 40 seconds later, Walter gets it to Naslund, who sets it up perfectly for Tremblay, waking up the form and cutting it to 3-2. Then just past the midway point, on a power play, Momesso centers it for Smith, who sees Naslund at the side of the net. He scores. The game is tied 3-3. 24 seconds later, the Oilers are caught sleeping as Carbonneau sets up Chris Nyland for his first goal of the year. 4-3, the Habs lead. But Gretzky's goal ties it, and it's 4-4 after 2 periods. Habs, however, are bombarding Moog, but they can't solve him in the third. Carbonneau is actually in Gretzky's literal shadow this period. And now we're off to overtime, and 42 seconds in, Mark Messier robs the Habs of a monster win, and it's a 5-4 overtime loss for Montreal. And remember, back then, you did get a point for that, just zilch. A heartbreaker, but Montreal is praised for keeping up with the powerful club, as Naslund was again fantastic with a goal and 2 helpers. But a rough night for Gainey and Chelios. Tremblay and Walter, however, played really well, but not an overly stellar night for Steve Penny either. Some bad news for the Habs, as they have to recall Claude Lemieux, as Stéphane Richer is out with an ankle injury for the foreseeable future. But the Canadiens recover as they host a solid-looking Flames team led by Lanny McDonald and superb defensive youngster Al McInnes, rookie Gary Suter, and veteran Paul Reinhart. The Habs send Lemieux, however, back to Sherbrooke and recall Steve Rooney, and Mike Lawler is reactivated after Kurvers is hurt again. And Waz put to the test, facing 39 shots, as he is sensational, however, stopping 36 of them. The Habs squeak out a 4-3 win. Larry Robinson leading many attacks out of the zone. He had 2 assists. Smith had a goal and an assist, as did Naslund. And Gainey made some great checks, especially late in the game. Then it was off to Washington to face the stacked Caps, led by, Rod Langway. And that stacked defense, including superstars Scott Stevens and Larry Murphy, topped off with a young Kevin Hatcher. Also up front, they had superstar winger Mike Gardner. Waugh actually suffers his first loss of the month. Montreal loses 5-3 despite the return of Lucien Dubois. And after missing 16 games, he notched a goal and a helper. And Chelios has 2 assists. Green plays badly, as does Naslund. But the boys in Le Bleu Blanc et Rouge bounce back with a 5-2 win over their division rivals, Buffalo, down 2-1 in the third. Montreal roared back thanks to 2 goals and an assist from Guy Carbonneau, and was burned to the retinas of Gilbert Perreault. Another great game from Larry Robinson, a goal and an assist. To end the month, it's Hockey Night in Canada, an Original Six showdown as the Montreal Canadiens host the Detroit Red Wings. The once proud Red Wings throughout the 70s and early 80s became known as the Dead Things. But since drafting a youngster by the name of Steve Yzerman, there was hope on the horizon after back-to-back playoff appearances despite losing records. But the Wings are off to a terrible start. Oh, wow! The Habs destroy them emphatically 10-1! Hey, where do I start? Well, Carbonell stays hot. 2 goals, 2 assists, 4.7 points in 2 games. Ridiculous. Oh yeah, and he also frustrated Stevie Y to no end. Chris Chelios, 3 assists, a +4. He is having an incredible month. Larry Robinson, a goal, 2 assists, 3 points, a +5. Mamesso, 2 goals. Tremblay, Gainey, Naslin, goal and a helper each. Mike McPhee plays a great game, 2 assists. Kerber's returned to the lineup, but just a huge night for Montreal. They performed a masterclass of defense as Wall only faced 17 shots. What a way to end the month. Well, needless to say, it was hard to choose the Molson Cup 3 stars in this one, but Carbonell was the first star. He's on his way to a career year, while Larry Robinson and Chris Chelios were second and third stars respectively, and are definitely in the early conversation for candidacy of the Norris Trophy. Whew. Well, a drastic improvement to say the least. Panic averted. 7-3-3 for the month of November, as the Adams division is the tightest and most competitive overall in the league, as it most often was at this era. The Habs are in a 3-way tie for 25 points, at the record of 11-9-3 in third place. The Northerners have more wins and sit in second place. The Sabres sit in fourth, as despite having more wins than Montreal, the Habs have the better winning percentage, while the Whalers are only just 3 points out in fourth. So we're not exactly in an overly comfortable position, but still not a bad one, and a much better than last month. And they're only 1 point back of first place Boston, so there's no clear-cut dominator in this Adams division. Bob Perron has finally implemented a defensive strategy which allows the offensive stars to thrive and still get back when they have to. And despite a few injury issues, they've maintained the flow, and the Habs have looked great. Even in the losses, they haven't exactly been embarrassed. And they've improved to 4.6 goals a game, up 1.2 from last month, and have only allowed 2.8 after averaging over 5 last month. Suddenly, the media doesn't seem to hate Perron all that much. And surprise, surprise, Mats Naslin is again a force out there. 6 goals, 16 assists, 22 points in 13 games, leading the team and scoring an excellent +7. Even better than his production last month, which was also great, as the emergence of the other Habs forwards breaking out of their slump has opened up more of a game for the superstar forward. Tied for second, however, are 2 defensemen. Larry Robinson, you'd think he was 24 rather than 34 the way he was playing. 3 goals, 12 assists, 15 points, +9. He has been ridiculously good, leading the Habs on the attack on the ice on all ends, and just as leading as a whole, as he's just a great leader, has his defense flowing. And it's benefited Chris Chelios, tied for second with Robinson. 2 goals, 13 assists, 15 points, a +8. His intimidation and physical tactics have allowed him to dominate on the ice. He has a great setup game and is key on the Habs power play. And again, he is just having a marvelous year. Bobby Smith showed a dramatic turnaround after a very bad start. He's back up to par. But the big shock is Sergio Mamesso, a -10 last month, had 12 points this month and was a +7. He'd been primarily working on a strong shutdown line with Mike McPhee, who also turned things around with 6 points and a +4, and Brian Skrudlin, who's still showing some drive. But the Habs are really getting so much and a lot from Guy Carbonell. Not only is he killing penalties, he's getting in the face of superstar forwards fearlessly, and got hot on the score sheet to end the month. Overall, he had a total of 12 points and a +6. But what happened to the red-hot rookies, you might ask? Well, Dallin's production's tapered off a bit. He had a cold streak, but overall is playing pretty well and has had a couple really good games. Richer was off to a hot start to start the month. He cooled down in the final couple of games before he got hurt. Well, the return of Mario Tremblay has definitely given the Habs a huge boost, and the timing was perfect, as also Deblawall looks great since returning. Ryan Walter has contributed significantly, as his enforcer Chris Nyland has looked pretty good. And how about Captain Bob Gainey? Wow, showing the world he can still be every bit as effective as his Selke winning self ever was. And his checking game is on point once again, and helping motivate the offensive stars to boot and the whole team. Steve Rooney filled his role decently, but Claude Lemieux during his game showed spark, but no real fire. Overall, however, the Habs finally got this forward core communicating immensely. Well, as I mentioned, Robinson and Chelios tie the defensive scoring lead. They're playing their styles to perfection, showing the key of the old guard meshing with the new guard to create success. But also a lot of credit should go to Peter Svoboda as well. He had an excellent month as the sophomore blue liner continues to evolve in his game, and was a great presence out there when it came to shifting momentum. Craig Ludwig, after a slow start in October, is back to form with his physical style of play and executing defensive strategies extremely well. Rick Green is back to healthy again and playing excellently. Tom Kerberos again deals with injury, but when healthy, he's actually looked very good in some games. Mike Lawler looked much better this month as well. In the few games that he played, a drastic improvement overall with the defense from last month. And again, many parties were inconsistent as this blue line core knows how to keep things steady once again. But leading in plus-minus, Bob Gainey, a massive plus 10. And he's as defensive as many as the blue liners out there. He's using the same methods and aspects that made him such a force throughout his career. And Perron needs to understand the best way to keep Gainey making an impact at especially crucial moments early and late in the game. Also improving the goaltending. Patrick Waugh, who fans again want sent to Sherbrooke, came alive. He had a 180 over October. Finished 5-1-0 compared to 2-3-0. A goals against average of an outstanding 2.51, down literally 2.33 points from last month's dreadful total. And a tremendous .910 save percentage, out nearly a full 100 after the abysmal 817 in October. As Perron's faith in the rookie pays off, Waugh was especially a standout performer in the wins over the Islanders and the Flames. Steve Penny, however, still can't seem to get going. He went winless with an 0-2-1 record. He had a rough 4.19 goals against average and an 841 save percentage, and while there are improvements from October, that's still not good. Meanwhile, however, Doug Soda, the veteran, shined pretty bright. Didn't lose a single game. A 2-0-2 record. Outstanding 1.92 goals against average. Excellent 914 save percentage. And he got the Habs' first shutout of the season as he has been focused and playing excellently in net. But still, many point out 3 goalies at once is still a risk, and the Habs need a more clear-cut direction. Juan Soder improved drastically while Penny is still stuck in a rut. The Habs start December just right. Another dominant win, this time 7-0 over Tony Tanny and a struggling Vancouver Canucks at the Forum. Gel Dallin explodes once again with a huge gain, 2 goals and a helper, keeping him in the Calder Trophy conversation. Naslund is making his candidacy on the Hart Trophy well known in the league for MVP. 2 goals and a helper for 3 points as well. Ryan Walter played a beauty with 3 assists. Bobby Smith was also fantastic, winning many key face-offs on top of his goal and assist, and a +3. Larry Robinson was excellent with a notch and an apple each, and Kerberos and Green made some great defensive plays. Doug Soder was a beast in net, 26 save shutout, making some highlight reel makers. But the Habs' 3-game win streak comes to a big halt in an 8-6 shootout with the Bruins at the Garden. Doug Soder pretty much doing a 180 in net, a terrible game. Peter Svoboda had a rough night too. The Habs were down 6-2 at one point, but did fight to stay in it. Bobby Smith stayed hot with 3 hoppers. Chelios had 2 goals, while Carbonneau had a good game. But some bad news. The Habs are going to be without Craig Ludwig for a little while. He's been nursing a bad shoulder for the last several games. He's going to be out of action for the next few weeks. And Lawler was reactivated for this game. And it don't stop there. Sergio Momesso, who after a terrible start, broke up huge in November. Sadly suffers a devastating knee injury. His season is over in a very heartbreaking way. On December 7th, however, it's Hockey Night in Canada as the Montreal Canadiens visit their oldest rivals, the Toronto Maple Leafs at Maple Leaf Gardens. Hey, no matter how either team is doing in the standings at a given point, this game always has eyes on the televisions from coast to coast. And indeed, this is no different. The Leafs are, however, not very good this year. Rookie star Wendell Clark is also hurt. They still have talents, however, such as all-star power forward Rick Vive, youngsters Russ Courtnall, Steve Thomas, Gary Lehman, and Ally Afraidy. Just 3:23 in, Dallin gets the puck back to Green at the point, who puts in front for Bobby Smith, and the Habs draw first blood. Leafs tied, however, near the midway mark of the period, but later on, Chelios finds an open Mats Naslund, who goes in on goal and wrenches it past Don Edwards. Habs lead 2-1. 1:08 later, Walter to Smith. Shot, no! Chelios, yes! Ha! He scores 3-1 Montreal after 1. The Leafs get back to within 1 early in the second, but just 3.5 minutes later, Dallin coming in with Smith leaves it, and Bobby scores at the good old hockey game. Oh, Habs up 4-2 at the best game you can play. Then it's Smith and Naslund to Debois at the good old hockey game. 5-2 Habs. Third period, Robinson begins the rush, as he always does so expertly. Finds Naslund, who puts at the right spot for Tremblay. 6-2. The Leafs do get one back, but the Habs win it 6-3. And indeed is in front of a national audience and have now won 4 of their last 5. Bobby Smith, wow, he has truly answered his critics and naysayers emphatically as of late. 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points, 9 points in 3 games. And Naslund, wow, 1 goal, 2 assists, 3 points, another night at the office. Chelios, Norris Trophy perhaps, here he comes. A goal, a helper, and Dallin, hot like he was in October, 2 assists. Robinson, a helper and a +3. Just impossible to get rid of by the opposition as he has been most of his career. Swoboda was also excellent here with a +3. And the Molson Cup 3 stars from Toronto, Mr. Dave Hodge. Sorry, I can't do a good Dave Hodge impersonation, but the 3 stars out of Toronto are a sweep from the Habs and a very diverse international trio. Canadian Bobby Smith, Swedish-born Mats Naslund, and American Chris Chelios. They completed the road trip with 2 more stops in the Northeast. First, a very good showing in a 3-1 win over the Hartford Whalers. It was rookie goalie Patrick Waugh who stole the show in this one, making his sweater number in saves with 33 and frustrating Kevin Dineen and company. Robinson also continues to have a great year, 2 assists, while Gainey, Nyland, and Naslund had the goals. Latter of the 3 scoring his 20th of the year. The game also saw the pro debut of future fan favorite tough man John Kordic. The next game, however, was a total opposite for Waugh. Disastrous 6 goals in 2 periods and 28 shots. Steve Penny would come in for the 3rd. The Habs lose to the powerful Flyers 6-3. Naslund, Smith, and Debelois with the goals. Then Montreal went back home and got a boost in the return of Stéphane Richer, hosting a puzzlingly struggling Blackhawks club and winning 6-3. Richer had a goal in his return, and Naslund, oh my goodness, again, 2 goals, 1 assist, 3 points. Robinson leading the attacks beautifully again, 2 assists. Bob Gainey also played up beauty here with a goal and a helper. Steve Penny plays his best game of the year with 27 saves on 30 shots. The next game, however, Montreal blew a 4-1 lead and had to settle for a 4-4 tie with Hartford. Dallin, however, continues to shine. A goal, a 2 assist, and 3 points. Smith and Walter with a goal and a helper each. Naslund stays hot with 2 more apples. Then it was a home-and-home battle of Quebec. 2 very highly competitive games that didn't disappoint. First at the Forum, the Habs bombarded Nord's goaltender Clint Malarchuk, but he was a machine in net. But Montreal still comes away with a 3-2 win. Naslund with a goal and assist. Chelios with 2 assists, and Carbonneau not only scores a goal but gives Peter Stastny a difficult night, as did Robinson. Then we travel to Le Colisée in Quebec City. Banner night for Larry Robinson, his first career hat trick. A perfect power play trifecta. The Habs, however, let a 3-0 lead slip. It was 4-4 after regulation, and with 3 seconds left in overtime, Quebec won it, casting a shadow on Larry's big night. Penny is heavily criticized for his performance. Robinson, however, is named for star of the game in a losing cause, but the Habs are dealt an awful blow here as Chris Chelios suffered a terrible injury to his left knee. There's no prognosis when or even if he'd be back. Ryan Walter, however, is also hurt, and Richer is out once again. Kordic was sent back to Sherbrooke. Alfie Turcotte and Steve Rooney are both called up. And the Habs bounced back from their woes. A 3-1 win over Buffalo at home. Dallin and Robinson each had 2 assists. Naslund with a goal and assist. And Waugh with 22 saves. And then on Friday, December 27th, it's the NHL on CTV. Brought to you by Carling O'Keefe Breweries. And in the way of the Habs, on the road are perennial laughingstock and annual basement dwellers, Kirk Muller and the New Jersey Devils, who year after year strive for the ultimate goal of not being as bad as Pittsburgh. Well, 20 seconds in, however, Aaron Broughton fools Waugh, but 2:36 later, Guy Carbonneau sets up Chris Nyland for a big goal to tie it. And late in the period, the Devils take the lead, but then with 2 seconds left in the frame, Carbonneau again finds Chris Nyland, using his fist to handle the stick to score a goal. 2-2 game after 1. Then in the second period, on that power play, Bobby Smith finds Tom Curvers open at that point, and he launches it to give the Canadiens a 3-2 lead. And then later, a dangerous line if there ever was one, Mats Tugel to Bobby! 4-2 Montreal. The Devils do get one back, but then Mike McPhee clears it to a streaking Dallin. He scores! Habs lead 5-3 after 2. Power play, Naslund controls, sees Tremblay near center. Can't get the open shot, finds Rooney, who gets the goal. 6-3, Montreal leads. Then as time winds down, here we go again. This time it's Mats to Bobby Tugel. Montreal takes it 7-3. Huge games all around. The superhero Swedes strike again. Dallin, 2 goals, an assist, 3 points. Naslund, 3 assists. Also, Bobby Smith, a goal, a 2 helpers, a 3 points for him as well. Chris Nyland, 2 goals. What a game for him. Carbonneau, 2 assists. Craig Ludwig returned to the lineup on this night as well. So, you may ask, and you're probably not, but who won the coveted Carling O'Keefe offensive and defensive stars of the game? Well, it was a tough choice, but it goes to Mats Naslund for his 3 helpers on this night as he continues his MVP caliber season. The defensive star is Patrick Waugh, as he did indeed play a beauty here. The rookie netminder had 33 saves on 36 shots, just outright robbing the Devils of many big chances. And each player of the game receives a gold coin courtesy of Continental Bank. Anyway, the Canadiens dished out the Devils again, much of the same on the next game. This time 8-3 and at home for their 3rd straight win. And Mike McPhee, his first career hat trick, adding an assist for a career night for this go-getter. 4 points. He was definitely soaking in the applause, and he was named the first star on the Molson Cup 3 stars on Hockey Night in Canada. Tremblay also had an outstanding game with 3 assists, as Dallin, Naslund, and Smith all stay hot. Ryan Walter returned with a vengeance with a goal and a helper. Robinson does the same. Well, another great month for the Canadiens. A December record of 8-3-1 is despite injuries to some key players, even some of their biggest stars such as Chelios. The Habs, they're in great shape. They're in first place in the Adams division going into the new year thanks to incredible performances up and down the lines on the blue lines and the goaltenders. They now sit at 19-12-4 for 42 points, but things are still pretty tight in the Adams division as they only sit on top, up a point on second place Boston. They're 2 up on Quebec in 3rd, just 3 up on 4th place Hartford and last place Buffalo. It's still a wide open game in the Adams division, especially with the Whalers doing so well this year. But the Habs' goal production increased again this month. They're now averaging 5 goals a game, up 0.4 from last month. And they did allow 3.25 goals a game, which is still a really good number from this era, but it's an increase over last month's 2.8. And hey, what do you know? Mats Naslund leads the team in scoring for the 3rd straight month. 10 goals, 15 assists, 25 points in 12 games. That's just above 2 points a game. He's delivering in aces. Oh, hell, he's delivering in spades, clubs, hearts. He's doing it all. Full house. Naslund is definitely making a case for MVP candidacy with the way he has guided this Habs team as their top star with now 62 points in 35 games. He's also a +1 to end the month. And we have a tie for 2nd for 20 points. First, Bobby Smith. Remember how bad he was in October? He turned it around immensely in November, and in this month, even more so. Playing like the man he was in Minnesota back in '82. 9 goals, 11 assists for 20 points in 12 games. Unbelievable. He's also utilizing his 2-way game now more effectively, key in face-off wins, defending against opposing forwards. He's really coming through for his club. And tied for 2nd with 20 points is Joel Dolan. 6 goals, 14 assists, and a +6. After a somewhat seesaw but yet not bad November, the rookie roars back, playing almost even better than he did in October, executing superb plays, getting himself in a serious combo for the Calder. Also, despite now dealing with injury issues, Ryan Walter had a tremendous month using his multi-skills. Guy Carbonneau was still making great things happen, while Captain Bob Gainey had some rough outings in December. He's still giving the Habs an edge on many nights. Brian Skrillin's game continues to grow, as does Mike McPhee, and despite being without Momesso, these two are finding ways to strive. Chris Nyland was probably the biggest surprise of the month. The famed enforcer had 8 points in 12 games, actually coming up really big in the clutch for Montreal in certain games. And hey, Mario Tremblay again doing what he has always done, racking up some points and getting out of the skin of the opposition. Deblois didn't have the best month, however. Stefan Richer looked good in the game he returned for, but then cooled off instantly before getting hurt again. Steve Rooney and John Kordig made their brief time up from Sherbrooke count for something. Overall, this forward core is moving really smoothly. Bobby Smith led the team with a +9. As I mentioned, his 2-way play has been nothing short of outstanding, and this shows it. And suddenly, those trade rumors have just subsided, as he looks like the complete player he was always meant to be. Now, some are actually saying, playing devil's advocate, that it was more Lemaire's strategy the prior season that diminished his offensive input, but regardless of the reason, his work is going to be key for the Habs the rest of the way this season. And to the defense. The defense. Yep, Larry Robinson led a banged-up Montreal blue line with 5 goals, 12 assists for 17 points. Continuing to have an amazing year. He stepped up his game in the absence While the foreseeable absence of Chris Chelios and injuries to the likes of Craig Ludwig. Again, just goes to show Robinson is showing once again what a tried and true leader he really is. And you got to point this out to a man who's a 14-year veteran on his way to the Hall of Fame and won so much, still has the desire to win more. Speaking of Chelios, he was well on his way, along with Robinson, that is, for Norris Trophy candidacy, but sadly his injury to his knee will derail that chance. Ludwig overcame shoulder problems and looked good upon returning. Kerber's had a bit of a hit-or-miss month, as did Lawler. Rick Green actually really came through for his team this month and actually deserves more recognition, as is sophomore Peter Svoboda. And again, they're stepping things up in the absence of other players. The goaltending was still solid. For the second straight month, rookie goaltender Patrick Roy had a 5-1-0 record. His other numbers took a slight dip, but were still excellent and very good. 2.82 goals against average, as well as a .906 save percentage, with huge performances outstanding against the Whalers and the Devils. Steve Penny did see his numbers improve, a 1-1-1 record, a so-so 3.43 goals against average, and a .970 save percentage, but he's also been dealing with a few injury issues. Doug Soder had a 2-1-0 record and another shutout. Again, an amazing performance to begin the month against the Canucks. But otherwise, his numbers really aren't all that stellar. He has an .865 save percentage, and his 3.33 goals against average isn't all that bad, but it's a dramatic increase over the last month, which was less than 2. Either way, Watt seems to be finding a level of consistency above sophomore, and now even veteran Soder, as the Habs' goaltending situation is looking a little more clearer on paper. Montreal begins the month on an all-Canadian road trip, but it wasn't a very happy New Year bringing in 1986 with a 3-2 loss in Toronto to the Leafs. Watt had 24 saves on 27 shots in a loss. The goals were recorded by Smith and Robinson, and Richer returned to the lineup. Then it was a trip over to Winnipeg to face the flightless Jets, led by superstar Dale Hawerchuk. Guy Carbonneau had a hold of him much of the night, and Montreal bounced back with a monster 7-3 win. Deblois, his biggest game of the year, 2 goals and a +4. Svoboda, 3 assists and a +2. Huge game for him, leading many attacks. Gainey was crazy good here too, making the big checking plays as well as a goal and a helper. While McPhee, Naslund, and Robinson also had a goal and a helper, and Walter had 2 apples and was a +3, while Bobby Smith also had 2 assists. Then a very thrilling outing, however, against the Flames in Calgary. Montreal led 3-1 after 1, but then fell apart in the second, 3 goals in 9 minutes, ending Patrick Roy's night. But 2 goals from Tremblay made it 5-4 after 2. The Flames tied it early in the third, but 1:50 later, Gainey scores what proves to be the game winner, and Soder barred the door the rest of the way for the Habs 6-5 win. In addition to Tremblay's big game, Mike McPhee broke out with another huge one, a goal, 2 assists for 3 points. Also, Brian Skrudland had a big night with 2 assists. And then, wow, back home against a solid-looking St. Louis Blues club led by Bernie Federico, Doug Gilmour, and Joe Mullen, the Habs crushed them, 9-2. Wow, okay, where do I start? Okay, well, Dallin, first career hat trick, 3 goals and a helper, 4-point night, a +5, amazing. Bobby Smith, a goal, 4 assists, 5 points, +6, wow. Naslund, 3 assists and also a +6. Robinson, 2 assists, a +4. Carbonneau, a goal, a helper, a royal pain in the ass to Gilmour and Federico. Svoboda, a +5 and a helper. Ludwig, +3 and an assist. 2 days later, it was a little more difficult for Montreal to beat Boston, but they still got away with a nice 5-3 win. That's 4 wins in a row. The Habs on a winning streak. Tom Curvers was the big hero on this night, a goal, 2 assists, 3 points. Naslund remains hot with a goal and assist. Robinson and Smith also continue to sell with 2 helpers each. And Deblois also get the 2 apples. Ludwig gets our rare goal here as well. However, Montreal's winning streak comes to an end. First, they suffer a 6-4 loss in New York against a so-so Rangers club. Curvers stays hot with 3 assists, giving him 6 points in 2 games. Dallin and Robinson have a goal and assist each. Rough night for Deblois and goalie Steve Penny. Then Gretzky and the Mighty Oilers took the Habs apart 6-3. Watt was pulled again in the second period, as the Habs goaltending is again being criticized after looking strong the last couple months. Gainey, Smith, and Robinson get the goals. This game was a big night for the Granby Bisons alumni of the 1984 draft picks Stéphane Richer and Patrick Roy. It was a game at the Forum, a 4-0 win over the Jets on January 15th. Richer had taken heavy criticism for his play as of late. After looking like a Calder Trophy candidate in his rookie month along with Dallin, he has scored just 2 points in his last 10 games and has a -3. But he reemerges on this night, 2 goals, beautiful plays to boot. Watt stops 19 shots in his very first career shutout. Not bad for a couple of guys run a dreadful junior team just a year prior. Also, Carbonneau was on Hawerchuk like crazy once again. Robinson was getting some jarring hits on the Jets forwards, while Peter Svoboda broke up many rushes and was a +3. The Habs were starting to look a little sluggish, however. First in Buffalo, 5-4 loss in overtime. Carbonell, Robinson, Gainey had a great night with 2 points each, while Ryan Walter had a brutal game. However, Montreal looked great in a 3-0 shutout win over the Islanders at home. Sardak gets his third shutout of the year, stopping 21 shots, including 6 bullets from Mike Bossy. And rookie Brian Skrudlin, tasked with covering Brian Trottier, did amazing, frustrating the normally unflappable number 19 and holding him to no shots. Bobby Smith plays great and has a goal and a helper. This game also saw a notable return of Gaston Gindra. Remember him? I mentioned him earlier. The Habs drafted him in 1979, and he was a solid defenseman, but I don't think he panned out like Montreal Brass, I guess you could say, hoped for at the time. I mean, in 145 games over 3 full and part of a 4th season, he had 15 goals, 49 assists, 64 points. It was a plus 36. That's not bad at all, but injury issues became a concern, and he was shipped to Toronto early in the 82-83 season. Had a pretty good year with the Leafs, helping them get into the playoffs, but after a disastrous 83-84 season, where he was a minus 31, he was sent to the minors just playing 5 NHL games in the 84-85 season. However, during that time, the Habs re-obtained him. But he was sent to Sherbrooke, where he was actually a huge part of that Calder Cup championship win. This year, he's been playing great in Sherbrooke. 11 goals, 20 assists, 31 points in 42 games, and giving that defensive edge. And with injuries to Green and Chelios, the Habs need a defensive depth. And Gindra can bring a little bit of that and gets another shot of the pros. Well, back to the action. Sadly, however, the Habs lose another overtime game, this one against the Nordiques. But good news, Chris Chelios is back. Bad news, he's out again already. Returned way too soon. Robinson had 2 assists, Richer and Carbonell with the goals. Sardak was excellent here, stopping 35 shots. The next game looked like Montreal was going to get their big win over the Blackhawks, who have actually turned things around since their last meeting. Naslund scored his 30th goal of the season with 4:19 to play, but the Hawks tied it 29 seconds later. And Montreal has to settle for a 3-3 tie. Wall was excellent here with 31 saves. Robinson had another 2 assists. Montreal has only won 2 of their last 7 games. And the media is once again kind of on their back, as are the fans. They're saying Perron is having trouble countering injury issues. In addition to Green and Chelios being gone, they've been without Mike McPhee for the past several games, and Svoboda also missed this one. Will he be back shortly? Naslund is not nearly as dominant in his game also as he was the months earlier. However, the Habs bounce back. Huge. First, a 5-2 win in Minnesota over the struggling North Stars. Might only call up Randy Busick as the unexpected hero, nephew of NHL Hall of Famer Johnny Busick. 2 goals. Dallin has 2 assists, while Sodar puts on a show in net, 28 saves. Then 2 days later, hosting the Toronto Maple Leafs, it looked like it was going to be another blown loss or a tie, as the Leafs tied it with 51 seconds left. But Bobby Smith finally gives the Habs an overtime win. Was great here at 28 saves. Then Naslund had 2 goals. Richer and Robinson had 2 assists each in the Habs' 4-1 win over Buffalo at home. And ending the month on another 4-game winning streak, a huge 5-3 win over the Nordiques, as Montreal were down 3-1, but goals from Gindra, Naslund, Carbonell, and an empty netter from Skrudlin, shorthanded no less, gave them the W. Gindra was amazing here as he has fully adjusted back to the NHL with a goal and a helper. Walter had the same, while Tremblay and Robinson each had 2 assists. And it began to what was looking like it might be a bad month. But indeed, it was another excellent month for the Habs. 10-5-1 in 16 games. To ring in the new year of 1986, they still sit in first place in the Adams division at 29-17-5 for 63 points. Are now 4 points up on second place Quebec, as the Bruins have slipped to third. And this with many injury issues to boot, despite a rough patch in the middle of the month as well. The 2 4-game win streak showed how hot the Habs are really looking this season. Their production, however, slipped to 4.3 goals a game, down quite a bit from 5, but still an excellent number, and are allowing just under 3 goals a game with 2.9, improving from last month's 3.25. Perron has this team driven and focused. However, Mats Naslund's streak of leading the team in scoring ends this month. Larry Robinson led the team with 5 goals, 18 assists for 23 points in 16 games, a tremendous +9. Now, at this point, Larry shouldn't just be in the Norris Trophy convo. Yeah, some Hart Trophy votes should be thrown his way as well. He is taking command of this club with many of the obstacles they are facing, mainly injuries, of course, and producing any way possible, playing his usual smart defensive game and adding as much offense as he could, guiding his team to many wins. Robinson was sparking comparisons of his 1976-77 season, but doing so as a much more grizzled veteran, a much younger and less stacked club. So some say that makes it all the more impressive. Bobby Smith is again second in scoring with 8 goals, 13 assists for 21 points, and a +5, still working at the tough areas and all ends of the ice and producing key plays. Mats Naslund may not have had the dominance he had in the last few months, but he still had 8 goals and 9 assists for 17 points and was still third in team scoring, making an impact game in and game out, continuing what is a banner year. Dallin had another great month. averaging a point a game, literally 16 points in 16 games, and his first career hat trick was a +8. Guy Carbonneau making it known that the Selke Trophy should have his name soon written on it, while putting up some excellent offensive numbers as well. Bob Gainey also pushes through the opposition as he has been in many key Habs victories over the years. Brian Skrudlin had his best month so far of his career, not only upping his shutdown game to great success, but also putting up some good offensive numbers. Devil Wall was on point this month, being key in many games. Ryan Walter had his best month so far this season. Tremblay struggled somewhat, but was key in many big wins. Stefan Richer just can't stay consistent, I'm afraid. Mike McPhee was looking good until his injuries. Chris Nyland continues to give the Habs that toughness edge, while Randy Busick played very well in the games he was called up for. Mats Naslund leads the team with a +11, which just goes to show his presence is still there regardless of how many points he may score, and it shows how his overall game has benefited the team. And yeah, of course, Robinson leads the defense in scoring, stepping up for a wounded defense. However, a lot of credit this month should go to sophomore Peter Svoboda, who is a massive +10, creating key momentum-shifting changes and big plays for the Habs that shift the games in their favor, showing his value to the club as his game has excelled this year and grown dramatically. Craig Ludwig was also outstanding this month, delivering some heavy artillery and punishment and overall impactfulness, while Tom Kurvers produces in many big ways as well. Gaston Gindra has fit back into the Habs lineup very nicely. Mike Lawler struggled a bit, but still played decently overall. This Habs defense is managing to keep it together. The goaltending, well, Waugh had some struggles this month. Still played a couple very excellent games, but finished with a 4-3-1 record and was pulled a couple times. He ended up with a 3.29 goals against average and 8.79 save percentage. Again, passable numbers. That might be the norm for a good goaltender in this era, but nowhere near as good as he was delivering the last couple months. But he did produce his first career shutout win. Steve Penny's injury issues are still a problem, and he's still not playing very well. 1-1-0 record, terrible 4.54 goals against average, horrendous 8.13 save percentage. But the big star in net this month is Doug Soder, the veteran goalie, playing some of the best hockey of his career. 5-1-0 record, a monster. 1.83 goals against average, and a huge 9.31 save percentage. That's crazy numbers in this era. He adds his third shutout of the year, making great saves, difficult stops, making some of those highlight reels. But once again, you know what this means. The Habs goaltending situation is not all that clear, or once again, it's still up in the air. The only thing consistent all year is how Penny has not had a good year. And indeed, the Habs start February right, winning their 5th in a row, a tight 2-1 win over the Bruins. Soder is sensational net, 26 saves. Guy Carbonneau plays a beauty with a goal and a helper. Also, Gainey plays a beaut, while Chris Nyland has 2 assists, and great news is Mike McPhee is back. Then it was time for the All-Star break. And indeed, the 1986 NHL All-Star Game, 38th midseason showdown, was taking place in Hartford this season at the Civic Center, February 4th, 1986. It will feature 2 Habs representatives, and I think it's a very little surprise that Mats Naslund is one of them, making his 2nd All-Star Game appearance, while Larry Robinson makes his 7th All-Star Game appearance, his first dating back all the way in 1974, and his most recent before this was in 1982. The Campbell Conference led 1-0 in the second period when Ray Bork sent the puck into Naslund, who set up Flyers All-Star Brian Propp to tie the game 1-1 after 2. Then nearly 5 minutes into the third, Sylvain Turgeon of the Hartford Whalers begins to play, gets it to Robinson, who sets up Peter Stastny of the Nordiques, and it makes it 2-1. Just 29 seconds after the Campbells tied it, Robinson sets up Brian Propp, his 2nd assist of the game. The Whales will go on to win 4-3, and Robinson was named 2nd star of the game, just short of winning game MVP. Then it was back to business, but business wasn't all that great. The Canadiens' 5-game win streak ends at the hands of the Nordiques in a very competitive outing, however, as the game was tied 2-2 until Quebec scored the eventual game winner with 1:15 to play, as Gindra plays very well here with a goal and a helper, Naslund with 2 assists, while Waugh made 26 saves in a losing effort. And then another 3-2 loss on the road, however, this time against the Caps. Dallin in on both goals with a goal and an assist, returning after missing the last couple games. Robinson has been pretty lackluster the last couple games himself, as Walter has too, and while it's pointed out the Habs' goal production is beginning to slow down this month. Well, that changed as they were able to get a win over the embarrassing Red Wings in Detroit at 5-3. Naslund and Smith with 2 helpers each. Defensemen shining as goal scorers, Kurvers, Lawler, and Gindra each with goals. Waugh makes 25 saves. But then the Habs return home, and it's not good. They face the wishy-washy Stars. It was an exciting game. And the Habs trailed 2-0 until Robinson got one in the second to cut the gap to 2-1 after 2. As Soder, along with young John Casey, were putting on a show in net. Naslund tied it past the midway point of the third period, but the Stars took a 3-2 lead. With 2:05 to play and 55 seconds left, 3 defensemen strike. Curvers to Savona to Robinson. His second goal of the game to send the form into a frenzy, but the Habs lose in overtime. Stoddard had 35 saves. And then lost to the Devils. Yep, 4-3. Was absolutely brutal here. 4 goals on 18 shots. He had more than enough room to breathe, playing his worst game of the year, perhaps. While Chico Resch on the other end would play like he was back on the Islanders in 1977. Naslund, Smith, and Tremblay with the goals. Well, Montreal has now lost 4 of their last 5, and some analysts feel their strategy is being exposed and their goaltending is still not consistent. The Habs need to get out of this funk, and now it's not going to get any easier, as on February 15th on CBC's Hockey Night in Canada, the Philadelphia Flyers are in town. The Flyers are at 38-16-4, 80 points, and are the defending conference title holders, looking to get back to the Stanley Cup. The Habs have yet to beat them this year. All-star forward Brian Propp leads the way, with young up-and-comer Rick Tocchet, superstar defenseman Mark Howe, and Vezina-caliber goalie Bob Froese. Well, to start out a very competitive game, very tight-knit, both teams' defenses and goalies looking sharp, but then on a power play with 27 seconds left in the period, Debelois gets it to Walter, who sets up Dallin. Still facing a bit of criticism lately, and he gives the Habs a 1-0 lead after 1. Then 4:17 into the second, Gindraw clears the puck out, and Dallin goes down goal, sets up Naslund at the side of the net, 2-0 Montreal. And the Habs play it smart with 1:32 left in the period on a power play. Robinson, as he expertly does, conducts it and gets it to Naslund, who tries it, misses, but it's back up to Gindraw. He scores 3-0 Habs after 2. This is the best they've looked all month. But then Mark Howe stuns Montreal with a shorthand early in the third, and then an exciting finish is about to happen as Robinson finds Nyland. 4-1 Montreal leads, but the Flyers strike 109 later, and then 3:35 after that. Suddenly it's 4-3. Don't tell me this is happening. But Montreal plays a very tight covered game. Gainey is all over any Flyer skater coming his way, and with 7 seconds left, he notches an empty netter. Montreal gets the huge 5-3 win over this powerful Flyers club. Larry Robinson, 3 assists. Plays great once again. Gindraw, Naslund, and Dallin, a goal and assist each. Bob Gainey, party like it's 1979, and playing like it too. Carbonneau, hey, he was a beast out there once again as well. Stoddard is excellent, 25 saves. But who are the Molson Cup 3 stars? Mr. Dave Hodge. Well, from the form in Montreal, the Flyers, Mark Howe gets the first star due to his goal and 2 helpers in the third period performance. But 1981 Molson Cup winner Larry Robinson is named second star, while Mats Naslund gets the third star honors. This is the type of win Montreal needed. While things got shaky in the third, they still played very well overall against a very good club. And it should get the momentum again. You would think that, but that wasn't the case. Once again, the Habs' poor overtime performances strike. Debelois and Richer, the latter breaking a slump, getting booed by Habs fans mercilessly as of late. And bad news, Doug Stoddard is hurt. Walk comes in, 2-2 after regulation. And the Habs look like they'll get a point, but the Kings win it with 24 seconds left. Not good. Ay. And then Montreal hosted the Caps, and they had a 3-1 lead. Collapsed the second, trailing 4-3. But Bobby Smith's second goal of the game gave Montreal a 4-4 tie as they managed not to blow it in overtime. As Smith had a huge 3-point night, many feeling he's the only scoring forward delivering consistently for Montreal this month. Naslund did have 2 assists, but the Habs did take it to a struggling Whalers club 6-3. Robinson again outstanding, 3 assists. Debelois, who has been struggling a bit, has 2 goals. Gindraw has a goal and a helper. Naslund and Tremblay with 2 assists each. Call up Randy Busick playing very well. Rick Green returns after a lengthy absence. And then the Habs begin a Western road trip, and they were not shooting the puck enough against the Oilers. And many feel it was the Habs' big gain to win, but they lost 3-2. Debelois and Tremblay with the goals. Steve Penny returns, making his first appearance in over a month, and does get a win in the Habs' 4-2 triumph over the Canucks. Mike McPhee doing what he does all year and emerging with a monster performance out of nowhere with 2 goals. And Montreal ends this puzzling month with a win. Not a good month at all, really. It's worse since October, as the Habs couldn't even string 2 wins in a row together. They still went 5-6-1, but they're still barely hanging on to first place, however. 34, 23, and 6, 74 points. The only saving grace is that the hated rivals Quebec also had a pretty bad February. They still have a comfortable lead, however, over the Bruins in third, and things are looking back to status quo in the Adams with the Sabres back and forth and the Whalers in last. What on earth happened here? I mean, okay, they weren't awful per se, but the lack of wins, the lack of delivery from big players, and it's hurt them. The injury bug didn't really hit them all that bad this month compared to others. As I mentioned, inconsistent goaltending and now flawed strategy seem to be what they're blaming it on. Well, the Habs averaged 3.3 goals a game. Not terrible, not great. They've also allowed 3 goals a game. Not bad, but the ratios are way too close together. Mats Naslund led the team in scoring for the fourth time in 5 months, 4 goals, 10 assists for 14 points. The only Montreal player to average a point a game all month, and he went from a +11 to a -1. He faced some harsh and pretty unfair criticism for his diminishing production. And his second was Gaston Gindra. Yeah, the defenseman had 5 goals, 6 assists for 11 points, -4. But he was producing well and playing very good in many games. He had some rough outings, but still making sure he stays in the NHL. He's making this opportunity count for something. Bobby Smith, for the 3rd straight month, makes the top 3 as he is tied for 3rd with 4 goals, 6 assists for 10 points, and a +3. He was probably the Habs' most consistent forward all month. And then tied with him is Larry Robinson, 2 goals, 8 assists, 10 points, a +2. Not as good as months prior, but still, again, the most consistent player overall in the Habs all year, and still having a banner season. 3rd time this year, Robinson has made the top 3. But overall, this is the worst the Habs forward core has looked since October. Dallin didn't have a very good month. Richer had some people saying he should be sent back to the minors. Carbonneau, however, still saw for the most part. Delois had a couple big games, but overall wasn't great. Neither was Ryan Walter, who the month before had his best month. This may have been his worst. Mario Tremblay was one of the actually better forwards this month. Mike McPhee started February rough, but ended strong. Whereas Brian Skrudland did a 180 and had a bad month. And Gainey was playing well, and Nyland continues to surprise. But the big shock was minor league call-up Randy Busick, who was actually playing very well. For the first time this season, Larry Robinson didn't lead the defense in points in a given month, and as I alluded to just now, Gaston Gindra was the leader. But Robinson was still great, of course, but I will actually maintain that the best defenseman this month that the Habs had, despite their struggles, was Peter Svoboda. He has been outstanding in crucial moments. Again, I feel he is underrated when it comes to his contribution to the team. And even in games the Habs lost, he was a big reason why things stayed close and his team stayed in it. He has become immensely popular among Montreal fans to boot. Rick Green returned, and isn't that much of note. Tom Kurvers actually had a really good month too. But Lawler and Ludwig weren't exactly delivering the way they should. And while the defense was in better shape than the forwards this month, little problems again were arising. Speaking of problems, it was happening in net again. As Waz's head was being called for once again, a bad 2-4-1, yet oddly enough, his goals against average improved slightly this month to a 3.23. His .863 save percentage isn't all that great. And yeah, but Steve Penny returned from injury, played a game, played decently, and got the win. Doug Soder played well before he got hurt, 2-2-0. And while his numbers saw a pretty fair dip, he still had a very good 2.77 goals against average and a .902 save percentage and was still the Habs' best goalie this month. However, there's no prognosis for his return, and because of that, plus Wall not doing great, and Penny's still very much a huge uncertainty all season. Habs' goaltending situation is now as murky as it was in October. Well, this month has been a huge setback for the Montreal Canadiens, but with 17 games to go, anything can happen. But at the same time, the Habs need their top guns healthy, and they're expecting Chelios back soon, which is good news. But everyone needs to get back on the same page. Perron is losing control, it seems. Either way, let's see what they can do here. The Habs begin the final stretch just right on March 1st with a big 6-4 win over the Kings in LA. Bob Gainey, what a night. 2 goals, a helper for 3 points. While the other Bobby Smith, had a goal, 2 assists for 3 points himself. He stays hot, and Dallin had 2 goals, Robinson 2 assists, and had some back-to-back wins for the first time in a month. But then it was back-to-back losses. First, 6-3 to the Islanders on the road. Chris Nyland, the highlight of that game, 2 goals. But then came a terrible 7-4 loss at home against the Blues. Now, yes, the Habs did get 4 goals, but some are calling this their worst performance of the season overall. Dallin, Tremblay, Delois, and Smith each had goals, and the latter 3 added an assist for 2-point games, but Carbonneau was dreadful here. Rare bad game for him, as were Gainey and Steve Penny in net. Some were calling it again the Habs' worst cohesiveness this season. But a nice reversal of fortune as the Habs down the Bruins 8-3 at home. Montreal was cohesive and in control in this one. A huge night for Mike McPhee, who hadn't been playing well the last few games. But he explodes again with a goal, 2 helpers, and 3 points. Gindra plays superbly with 3 assists. And Chris Nyland continues to have another career year with the 2-goal game, while Carbonneau bounced back from his disastrous outing with 2 assists. But then, 5-2 loss to the Whalers followed. Nyland and Lawler with the goals, but a bad, just overall unfocused game. And a look back against the Canucks early on, being down 2-0 after one period, but Wall buckled down and played his best game in quite some time, 31 saves on 33 shots, as the Habs made a comeback, winning 3-2. Richer notching the tie-breaking game winner with 4:04 left to play, the other goal scored by Naslund and Robinson. And after missing the last several games, Brian Skrudland returned to the lineup. With 11 games left on March the 12th, despite still being inconsistent, the Habs still sat in first place 3 points up on Quebec. Ballpark numbers might suggest that the Habs literally need 10 points to clinch a playoff spot, meaning to win just 5, less than half their games left of the season, and it's that easy. As despite the season nearing a close, things are still not for sure in the Adams division. But what happened next, despite the difficulties that they've gone through this year, was truly unthinkable. It began with 3 straight losses. Ugh, not good. First to Boston, and Montreal didn't play bad here necessarily, but Waugh did let in 3 goals on 19 shots, and once again, venomized by the Habs public. Naslund reached 40 goals for the second straight year, and Smith had 2 helpers, but Svoboda got the other goal. Then it was a 5-3 loss to Calgary. Bobby Smith perhaps plays his worst game since October. Naslund is pretty bad here too. Nyland, Richer, and Tremblay get the goals. But good news, Doug Sitter is back. Bad news, he does not get the start. Was in net, and he lets in 6 goals. They put in Doug later on. The Habs lose 8-6 to Quebec. Stefan Richer, well, he's actually been playing pretty well again lately. Gets his first of what would be 10 career hat tricks. But Montreal's booed off the ice as they lose their hated rivals, and they now leaped over them for first place. Naslund is again just awful here. This was not a game the Habs could afford to lose, but even worse after the loss, Mario Tremblay encounters more shoulder problems that's bugged him since the beginning of the season, and the prognosis isn't good, and he's out for the season. As a matter of fact, he'd never play another NHL game again, and announced his retirement just before the 86-87 season was set to begin. After 852 games, 584 career points, as he did record an assist in his final game, and being immensely popular with the Habs Nation, his career draws to a close, and he was having a pretty good season too. But finally, some good news. The Habs got Chris Chelios back for their March 19th game against the crashing Jets, and he hasn't lost a step. 3 assists in this one and still using that physicality. Bad news. The Habs lose 6-4, despite Ryan Walter also breaking out of a bad spell with a 3-point night. And Stoddard's first start in several weeks, he's a disaster. 4 losses in a row. Something's got to give here. A little bit of a silver lining, I guess. Larry Robinson reached a huge milestone on this night on March 19, 1986. This day against the Jets, it was his 1,000th career NHL game. And of course, each one of them has been played in the uniform of Les Bleus Blancs et Rouges. He suited up for the very first time for his team on January 8, 1973, where several months later he'd have his first Stanley Cup ring. And it was at the Forum against the Minnesota North Stars, being called up due to injuries on their blue line. And 999 games after that, he's a legend, future Hall of Famer. A huge honor for number 19. Well, I said something's got to give. The only thing that gives is the Habs giving way to opponents. 2 more losses. 6 in a row. Oh, they showed life in a 3-2 loss to the Blues. Gingeron McPhee with the goals. Then they ran into red-hot Mike Liut in net and lost 3-0 to the Hartford Whalers, a rare shutout loss. Despite firing 30 shots in on the All-Star goaltender, this is atrocious. Inexcusable. And look, in the past, I've actually defended Perron's time coaching Montreal more than most. He's doing very little to nothing to re-strategizing this formula. In more bad news, Tom Kurvers' back is suffering from muscle issues. His season is over. There were massive rumors swirling about Perron, just despite 5 games being left in the season, that he may be fired and replaced by either assistant coach and Habs Hall of Fame defenseman Jacques Laperriere, or Jacques Lemaire would return behind the bench. And the media felt that this would be a welcome thing before playoff time hits, and they felt Perron just wasn't ready to coach on the NHL level. But the Habs star players, however, didn't deliver as the way they should. Naslund has been brutal. 3 points in 6 games, a horrible -7 in this losing skid. Bobby Smith showing his October self, and that's not a good thing if you recall. 4 points in 7 games. Well, that itself is not overly bad. His -7 is. Rookie sensation Dallin, just 1 assist and a -4. Ryan Walter had 4 points, but 3 of those came in 1 game, and it was a -4, not playing well at all. And it seemed as though the workhorses, Gainey, Carbonneau, and the resurgent Richer as well, are the only ones really delivering on the forward core consistently. Larry Robinson played 5 of the 6 games of this losing skid and wasn't up to par either. Going a helper and a -1, not awful, but again, not to his standard. While nobody expects Craig Ludwig to score any goals, they certainly don't want him to be a -4. Ginger was a -3 with 3 points and also not very consistent. Nor do they expect Rick Green to score either, but he did have 2 points and was an atrocious -6. Svoboda was holding up the faltering blue line as Chelios was hot in his first game back, but he kind of instantly cooled off. And the goaltending, wow, 4 losses. Lost each penny and Sodar, but the rookie had a miserable .825 save percentage, with his equally bad 4.5 goals against average. Well, now the Habs are at second place in the morning on March 27th, and now 7 points behind the Nordiques, who got hot at the right time. 5 games left. Catching them doesn't seem all that feasible. As a matter of fact, a playoff spot still isn't even guaranteed. They're only 2 points up on Boston in third, 3 up on Hartford in fourth. Even last place Buffalo is only 4 points behind them. And the once unthinkable idea, in theory, of the Habs missing the playoffs has actually been floated around. If they continue like this, that's very much going to happen. And as luck would have it, so to speak, they took their 6-game losing streak into Boston against the team on their tail, the Bruins. And the Bruins took a 1-0 lead near the midway point of the opening period, but the Habs, unlike previous games, didn't really lose focus and get frustrated. As Svoboda gets the puck up near Walter, and he takes a stab at it, he can't get it, but back to Chelios, who scores. Habs tie it. And then as the period is winding down on a power play, Naslin steers from the wing over to Chelios, who gets to Gindra, who slaps it home. 2-1 Montreal leads after 1. But the Bruins got 2 goals in the second, and now the Canadiens trail 3-2 and are a mere 20 minutes away from their 7th straight loss. But 6 minutes into the third, however, Chelios leads a rush. That leads to the stick of Guy Carbonneau, who puts on the side net for Gainey, who scores. The game is tied 3-3. Is there a light at the end of this dark tunnel? Well, at the very least, there was a flicker at the end of the tunnel. The Habs didn't lose. They got the point in the 3-3 tie. Watt, to his credit, despite his very poor play as of late, made some huge saves in this one. But the story was Chris Chelios, determined to keep the Habs going. He was in on all 3 goals, the goal and 2 assists for 3 points. And while it was a good performance, the fact remains, Montreal still winless in 7. Then on March 29, 1986, the Habs were live on Hockey Night in Canada, hosting sophomore Mario Lemieux, who is having just a remarkable season, MVP caliber, and the Pittsburgh Penguins. But the Pens as a team as a whole, however, having a very bad March, but they're still just 1 point out of a playoff spot in the Patrick division, and could come breaking through at any time, as they haven't made the playoffs since 1982. The Habs were killing a penalty early in the first, and an errant pass from the Pens allowed Mike McPhee to break out free of the defense, going on Gilles Melange, and he sets up Brian Skrudland. He gets the big short-handed goal, sending the Forum into a frenzy. But 2:06 later, the Penguins tie it. But later on, minor league call-up Claude Lemieux, who pretty much is replacing Tremblay, more or less, as a strong winger on this team. Back in the lineup, gets it to Smith, who sets up Naslin, and the Habs lead 2-1 after 1. Then killing another penalty, again a bad play by the Pens, leads to Carbonneau, going to go with Mike McPhee, who scores another shorthanded goal for Montreal. 3-1, they lead. But just over 2 minutes later, the Pens close the gap to a goal. Then late in the period, Skrudland off a face-off when he gets to Richer, who launches it home for 2 Habs after 2. The Penguins get another one back near the midway point of the third, but Watt's making some big saves, including 5 this night on Mario Lemieux. The clock counts down, and hot dog! We finally have a win. Montreal breaks their 7-game winless streak with a 4-3 win over the Penguins. The Habs penalty kill really took the Penguins' weak power play apart. 2 shorthanded goals, a goal and a helper each for McPhee and Skrudland, both of the formers coming on shorthanded goals. And a big game from Patrick Waugh, stopping 27 shots, and Peter Svoboda having a great outing as well. Oh, and Mr. Dave Hodge, the Molson Cup 3 stars, please. And indeed, from the Forum in Montreal, the first star is Mike McPhee. With his 2 shorthanded points, a goal and an assist, Brian Skrudland with a goal and a helper himself is the second star. And the Penguins' John Jabbat is the third star with his 2 assists. Either way, the Habs lift the weight off their shoulder, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's finally shining. The Nordiques, however, have clinched first place on this day. And more bad news, Ryan Walter, in a very scary moment, was inadvertently struck in the eye with a stick and temporarily lost vision even. There's no prognosis for his return. Habs, however, still have 3 games remaining. And they were able to get a 6-3 win over the dead thing Red Wings at home. McPhee and Skrudland keep up their red-hot ways. 2 goals for McPhee, a goal and a helper for Skrudland. Claude Lemieux also played a beauty with a goal and a helper. Naslund had the same, and Deblois and Carbonneau each had 2 assists. Bob Gainey reached a 20-goal mark for the first time since the 1981-82 season. And indeed, the Habs have clinched a playoff berth due to a Buffalo loss, but then 2 games remain, a home-and-home against Buffalo, who are fighting for their playoff lives, trying to clinch that 4th and final spot. And the Sabres get the better of Montreal at home, 4-2. Chelios and Naslund get the goals. And as for Naslund, however, it is his 43rd of the year, setting a new career high. But the Habs did a 180 at home for the final game of the season, a 4-2 win over the Sabres. Naslund plays his best game in a very long time, 3 assists. Bobby Smith had 2 goals, Dallin had a goal and a helper, and Swoboda was amazing on the blue line. The Habs shake their 6-game losing streak / 7-game winless streak and win 3 of their last 4 to end the year. Well, March into April wasn't very good despite the good finish. The 6-game losing streak / 7-game winless skid had many doubting the Habs are a team that are going to make much of a dent in the postseason. Their overall record in the final 17 games of the year, March into April, 6-10-1. Ouch. And they finished the season, however, with an overall record of 40 wins, 33 losses, 7 ties for 87 points. That's 7 less than the prior year. It was, however, good enough for second place as they managed to keep the Bruins off their tail just by 1 point. But they had to watch the hated Nordiques take the Adams Division title for the regular season for the first time. Crazy happenings, however, as the Buffalo Sabres, despite a .500 record, missed the playoffs for the first time in 12 seasons, while the Oilers made their playoffs for the first time since 1980 and only the second time in their NHL history. Confidence in Perron was low, and the Habs just didn't seem to have a team with the right elements to be consistent. Yes, they were dealt severe blows, obviously losing Tremblay, Curvers, and Walter, and that will only hinder matters going forward. In this final stretch, the Habs did average 3.6 goals a game, which again is on par for what they've done all year, and an improvement over February even. Very good number. But they've also allowed 4.1 goals a game, their worst monthly mark all year. Last 2 months of the season has left many in doubt, and it's easy to see why. Well, for the 5th time in 6 months, Mats Naslund leads the team in scoring as he was the only player to average a point a game, despite how bad and terrible he was on many nights during the losing streak. He had 5 goals, 12 assists for 17 points, and in 17 games was a -5. Bobby Smith was second best on the team in scoring and has been in the top 3 all but the first 2 months of the season. And he had 6 goals, 8 assists for 14 points. It was a -2. It was also quite bad in the losing streak, as I pointed out, but still played many big games this month and was still effective in a two-way presence. Third in scoring was Mike McPhee. Yeah, that was a bit of a surprise. What a year he was having, and as his importance to the Habs lineup was evolving month by month, it seemed. And this month he just popped up unexpectedly with more big game performances. 5 goals, 8 assists, 13 points. His work on the penalty kill has become a huge asset to this team. Chris Nyland had another really good month, while Guy Carbonneau had a few struggles, but overall was still the primary workhorse, and Bob Gainey deserves credit too. Dallin had a couple of good, decent games, but it wasn't a great month for the rookie. Steven Richer was showing flashes of his early season sell. Deblois was solid again, but also dealing with injuries. Ryan Walter, before his injury, sadly wasn't playing all that well, whereas Tremblay was actually playing very well before he went down. Brian Skrudland bounced back, especially near the end of the season, while call-ups Randy Busick and Steve Rooney were decent, as was Dave Maley, and Claude Lemieux was finally showing some spark, but overall, more questions than answers once again plague this forward core going into the postseason. And for the 5th time in all but 1 month, Larry Robinson leads or / co-leads in defensive scoring. 3 goals, 7 assists for 10 points is tied with Gaston Gindra, who had 2 goals, 8 assists for 10 points as well. And brings a good offensive spark, but he was a -7. Now Robinson, who like most was a bit rough during the losing streak, but overall was still the main reason, according to many, and I do agree with this as well, that he's the reason why the Habs just didn't completely fall apart and miss the playoffs. And poor Tom Curvers. In just 6 games, he looked really well, and he was an excellent +5 leading the team. And he's played many great games this season, but as I mentioned, he won't be seeing any more action. Peter Svoboda had another really good month. His emergence this year has been a sight to behold. Mike Lawler had perhaps the best month that he's ever had at this point, while Craig Ludwig wasn't really stellar. Rick Green was really bad. And now the question is, what defensive lineup overall is Perron going with in the playoffs? Still unknown, as the defense is now a big question mark themselves going into the postseason. If the forward core and the defensive core wasn't already unclear, oh boy, the goaltending situation isn't great either. Waugh played the most games, and that was mainly due to injuries.
he wasn't that great overall. Again, was stellar towards the end of the season, played a couple really good games. But this isn't very promising. A 5.61 record, a 3.56 goals against average, a slightly improved yet still mediocre 8.68 save percentage, and any little progress Steve Penny made last month was gone completely this month. 1-2-0. Horrible 4.91 goals against average, and even worse 8.24 save percentage. Doug Soder battled injuries. He didn't look great upon his return either. Lost 2 games and 3 appearances. Horrendous 5.80 goals against average. Even worse 8.18 save percentage. Man alive, this is bad. But now as the season is over, we look at the final numbers. The Habs improved their offensive input over last season. They had 309 goals in 84-85, 11th best in the league, right at the midway point. They scored 330 this year, 21 more than last season, and 7th best in the league, 4 spots higher. Very good. Habs, however, gave up 18 more goals this year than they did last season, with 262 last year and 280 this year. However, just like last season, they gave up the 4th least goals in the league still, only behind the Flyers, Caps, and Sabres. Yeah, they had their goaltending issues, but it was more had to do with consistency than anything. Up until the end of the season, they had at least one excellent netminder a month, and it showed. In this era, that's exactly all you need, really. Now for special teams. The Habs power play improves. Last year, they were still ranked a very good 6th, but they shot up to 3rd best in the league this year. The penalty kill, however, remained the same, very strong, 8th best, same as last season. Many see this as simply another status quo for Montreal. Yeah, they check all the boxes, but they ain't done that much this decade. And their only deep playoff run was during their worst season of the 1980s at this point. Either way, this is a solid team on paper, just not overly consistent. Well, hey, as you know by now, Mats Naslund led the team in scoring with 43 goals, 67 assists, or 110 points, and didn't miss a single game. He becomes the first player since Guy Lafleur in 1979-80 to score 100 points in the season for the Habs. Despite some troubles along the way, more towards the end than anything, he did have a hard work ethic overall, and his game in the NHL grew immensely, and he also finished a plus 11. Second was Bobby Smith. After a bad start, he really came alive, had his best season yet since arriving in Montreal in the early 83-84 season, with 31 goals, 55 assists for 86 points and a plus 10, missing just one game. He showed great two-way formation and, again, was looking like the complete player he was in Minnesota, as Habs fans were skeptical on what he had to offer still, but showed he has quite a bit left. Third was defenseman Larry Robinson, 19 goals, 63 assists, 82 points in 78 games, missing just 2. He truly was the Habs MVP this year, showing he was an ageless wonder. And not only is he laying out some jarring checks and hits still, he's still in command of the offensive rushes out of his zone. Few did it better and making great setups. This is also the second highest point total of his career, as his 85 in 1976-77, which I mentioned many times earlier in this video, was his best. But as for the rest of the forwards, Guy Carbonneau had an incredible year. Not only was he very durable playing in all 80 games, but key in the Habs' steady penalty kill, his coverage of top forwards, especially all-star centers, was on point, even in games the Habs lost. The rookie stars, Gel Dallin, was outstanding. Hey, 71 points in 77 games. Overall was really good. Riche started hot, cooled off, heated up again towards the end. Either way, his 21 goals is nothing to sneeze at. Captain Bob Gainey showed he's still one of the best pure two-way players in the game and one of the best leaders. Mike McPhee was not only a good shutdown forward, but he would just burst out with these epic performances out of nowhere on a given night. Brian Skrudlin had a few troubles, but he showed fearlessness and aggression, and especially by the end of the season, he was really into his game. Mario Tremblay was having a really good year, like many others he's had in his career, but sadly his career comes to an untimely end. Ryan Walter had consistency issues, but overall was still very impactful in several games before getting hurt. Lucien Delaroy also played excellent in several games, but he also faced injury issues and was scratched on several nights from the lineup. But Chris Nyland, again an enforcer who served a purpose, again back in an era where a lot of them did, not only sent messages with his fists, but also with his puck and the stick without jamming it in somebody's guts, that is. He played many great games and still gives the Habs a much-needed edge on many nights. Sergio Momesso, I should give credit to, after a terrible start, came alive, but his season was cut short thanks to an untimely injury. But let's give a shout out to the minor league call-ups here. Randy Busick made the most of his time on the roster. Steve Rooney added some toughness, and while Claude Lemieux's call-up the first time wasn't all that great, his second call-up he showed a bit more of that spark that the Habs wanted out of him. Naslund's 110 points was 8th best in league scoring, and not only that, again the first Habs player since Lafleur to reach the top 10.
He also became the 4th European player in NHL history to reach 100 points in a season. The other 3 was fellow countryman Kent Nilsson, as well as Czech native Peter Stastny, who this year was 6th in scoring, and fantastic Finn, Jari Kurri of the Oilers, who was 4th in scoring. Naslund also made the top 10 in power play goals, finishing tied for 6th with 19, sharing that spot with Stars superstar Dino Ciccarelli and the Flyers' Ilka Sinisalo. The Habs power play improvement as one of the top 5 in the league is in large part thanks to good old Mats. And of course, that means he also made the top 10 in power play goals on ice for with 71, 8th best mark in the league, as he always found many ways to contribute to the extra man advantage even when he wasn't scoring goals. And once again, good old Mats Naslund makes another top 10 category, top 10 in offensive point shares with a 7.5, 10th best in the league. Oddly enough, if you look at this list right now, Naslund is the only person on this list not in the Hall of Fame. Well, yes, it's a given since he was 3rd on his whole team in scoring that Larry Robinson led all defensemen in scoring, and he also led the Habs as a whole with a plus 25. Robinson's ability to adjust to the ever-changing game and continue to progress, even at this point in his career, and evolve, despite already being a legend, pretty much a first-ticket Hall of Famer, just goes to show his will to benefit his team any way he can is truly off the charts. But the man who truly grew this year more than anyone was Czech import and sophomore Peter Svoboda, who under Robinson's leadership was key to the Habs strategy all season long and excelled in many key defensive situations and was next to Robinson as the best defenseman on the team, and the two were often paired together. Rick Green was hit or miss, as was Craig Ludwig this year, but both were still beneficial to the lineup. Chris Chelios actually looked poised to be a Norris Trophy candidate at the start of the season. Of course, his injuries limited him to 41 games, but regardless, when healthy, he was very productive, and he also progressed tremendously. Gaston Gindra, the man who many wondered if he'd ever get a shot at the NHL again, helped the Habs in many ways towards the end of the season. Tom Gerbers was having a great sophomore year himself, as he too was growing in his game until his injuries. Robinson, to little shock, made the top 10 amongst defensemen scoring with 82 points. As a matter of fact, he was tied for 2nd best in the league with Mark Howe of the Philadelphia Flyers, only behind Oilers superstar Paul Coffey, who had a record-setting year. He ran away with that title with 138 points. This is the first time since his Norris Trophy winning season in 1979-80 that he has made the top 10 in this category, and the 6th time in his career. Robinson also finished 3rd in defensive point shares with 5.8, only behind Flyers blue liners Mark Howe and Brad McCrimmon in 2nd and 1st respectively. This is the 10th time in Robinson's career he has made the top 10. And look who's at number 6. Peter Svoboda is 5.4, once again emphasizing just how big a part of this team he has become, and making the category, of course, for the very first time. And total goals on ice for also sees Larry Robinson finishing 3rd in this category as well, as his total was 190 behind Coffey and Gretzky as 2nd and 1st respectively. His first time making the list since 1979-80 and the 5th time in his career. And now the goalies. And yes, while the Habs had one of the better goaltending tandems in the league, it was consistency that was always the issue. That I don't know, have one really good goaltender a month, and occasionally they'd have 2. But rookie Patrick Waugh finished best among all of them in terms of wins, with a really good 23-18-3 record, a very good 3.36 goals against average, a solid 875 save percentage, and a shutout. Steve Penny did battle injuries, but his 6-8-2 record, 4.3 goals against average, and 839 save percentage were pretty damn bad. His career sadly took an instant nosedive after this season, after what looked to be a promising career ahead. Veteran Doug Sodar perhaps had the best year of his entire career. 11-7-2, an excellent 2.77 goals against average, a tremendous 895 save percentage, and 3 shutouts. Despite the consistency issues in Penny's bad year, the Habs' defensive system helped him a great deal. Sodar, however, since he played less than the 1/3 of the minutes the Habs goaltenders didn't make the top 10 in goals against average, but Patrick Waugh did. His 3.36 was ranked as 6th best. Yes, this is very telling of the era, of course. He is actually ranked 2 spots ahead of former Habs goalie Rick Wamsley, now playing for the Blues. Although you can't keep Sodar as shutout leaders, that's right, his 3-0s was tied for 3rd with John Van Beesbroek of the Rangers. And now let's see how the Habs did for awards. Guy Carbonneau was a finalist for the Selke Trophy as the league's top defensive forward, coming in 3rd in voting, notching 52 votes for the coveted award.
This was the first time he'd be a finalist. He came in fifth the year prior and got some votes 2 seasons prior. He finished a runner-up to Ron Sutter of the Flyers and the winner Troy Murray of the Chicago Blackhawks.
Jean Dallin was a finalist for the Calder Trophy as the league's best rookie, coming in third with 83 votes, finishing behind Leaf sensation and first overall pick from 1985, Wendell Clark, who was in second, and winner, defenseman Gary Suter of the Calgary Flames. The Lady Byng Trophy for excellence in sportsmanship saw Mats Naslund make it as one of the finalists, coming in third. This is the first time he's a finalist. He had 99 votes. He's actually just 1 vote behind second place Yari Curry of the Oilers, while Islander icon Mike Bossy took home his third honor. Naslund has gotten votes in all 4 seasons he's been in the league, and was 5th the year prior.
And for the Norris Trophy, as the league's top defenseman, Larry Robinson's bid for a third honor, however, falls short. He does come in third with 43 votes behind Mark Howell winner Paul Coffey, who's taking his second straight honor. Robinson, as I mentioned before, has won it twice, has been a finalist now 4 other times, and came in 5th 1 other time. Here are more Habs players who got award votes. Larry Robinson wasn't done as he was the only one to register a vote for the Hart Trophy, a singular vote that is, tied for 10th place. I'm sorry, but how on earth does Mats Naslund not even get 1? It's utterly ridiculous. Despite his tapering off late in the season, he still was productive in many ways and deserved a lot more recognition. And Robinson, however, does definitely deserve his vote and probably should have gotten a few more even. Patrick Waugh actually came in tied for 9th in Vezina Trophy voting as the league's top goalie. He also came in 5th for Calder Trophy voting with 8 votes. For the Vezina, he just got 1, but still, good accomplishment in his rookie season. Robinson was also tied for 14th in Lady Byng Trophy voting with 3 votes, and Dallin had 2 votes at 19th place. And Bob Gainey, who won the Selke in its first 4 seasons of its existence, has gotten voting in the 5 subsequent seasons that have followed after that, keeping his streak of 9 straight seasons of getting votes at least alive. Wow. 6th place this year. And the Molson Cup 3 Stars Trophy winner, Mr. Dave Hodge, is Mats Naslund, winning the award for the very first time as a player with the most after game 3-star selection points. Both Jean Dallin and Patrick Waugh made the league's all-rookie team this season. The first time an all-rookie team was put together in 82-83, Naslund actually made the cut, and last season both Chris Chelios and Steve Penny made their all-rookie team as well. And lastly, the year-end Team All-Stars. The second Team All-Stars, to be specific, as 2 Habs are rewarded. Mats Naslund, yes, still didn't get a vote for the Hart Trophy. First time in his career is a Team All-Star. And Larry Robinson is a Team All-Star for the first time since 1981, a second Team All-Star for the 3rd time, and just overall Team All-Star for the 6th time in his great career. Well, hey, the Habs, they're a really good team, but not great, it seems. They embark on what looks like to be another playoff run, simply as that. But the adventure they were about to take on, well, it'd be one that's truly unforgettable. But we'll cover that in part 2 of our look at the 1985-86 Montreal Canadiens. Thank you for joining us on this part 1 of the journey. Until the next time, please like and share the video, subscribe to the channel. Until next time, I'll see ya!